Today we'll have Linda's Paris and London ABD trip report. That's coming up on this episode 365 of WW Prep to Go. Hello and welcome to WW Prep to Go, where we talk strategy and ideas for people planning their Disney World trips. I am your host, Shannon Albert from WDWPrepSchool.com. Thank you for being here for episode 365. So we have been on a roll with these interesting trip reports, and today is Linda and her family. They flew to London, had a couple days on their own. They joined an ABD that started in London and went to Paris, and then they ultimately ended up at Disneyland Paris. So if you're interested in that kind of a trip, either listening to it or maybe taking one someday, I think you will find a lot of value in this trip report. Before we get into that, a reminder to follow on social media, and now that includes the new Threads app that was launched by Meta/Facebook. And we just joined that along with tens of millions of other people, apparently. And we've been looking for a Twitter alternative, but there hasn't been one. And hopefully this one will be it. So if you are on Threads, be sure to look at WDW Prep School there, where we will be happy to connect with you. That is in addition to all the other platforms, including Facebook and Instagram and TikTok and YouTube, etc., etc. So happy to connect with you there and keep you updated on all of the Disney parks things. And as always, a reminder that if you want to be a trip report guest like Linda, please leave a message at the Speak Pipeline with the details of your trip. And if it works with our schedule or the details are interesting and different than something we've already had, we'll reach out to you to get the interview scheduled. I think that's it. Here's my chat with Linda. Welcome to the podcast, Linda.
Hi, Shannon.
I am excited to talk to you. We are talking on Friday, June 9th for your pre-trip. And I understand that you have a trip coming up that sounds like a lot of fun.
Yes. Oh my gosh. I can't believe it is in 4 days. How did this happen? I don't understand.
So it starts June, 13th?
13th. We are gone. The 13th is our flight, and we are gone until the 26th. That's 13 days, if I did that math right.
Okay.
Yeah.
And this is not a Disney World trip.
No, it is an Adventures by Disney. It is London and Paris ABD, followed by a post trip to, drumroll please, Disneyland Paris.
Okay. Which means that the ABD does not include Disneyland Paris?
Yes, I did not do the add-on. I actually wound up booking it separately because the price was just bananas. But we are doing both an ABD and a DLP. I'm so excited. I can't wait.
All right. I'm excited to talk to you about it. Okay. So June 13th, you said is your flight. So the ABD begins just after that, I assume, right?
So, and I have a little bit of a pre-trip. Oh my gosh, we have so much to talk about.
Okay. So, and we need to talk about who's going too.
Yes. Okay. So it is me. I'm mom. My husband is dad. And I have 2 kids, a 10-year-old named Addie, my daughter, and an 8-year-old son named Theo. And it is their first international trip.
Okay. Is that part of why you booked an ABD?
Exactly. Me and my husband has had dreams of traveling internationally. And we are big Disney World people. We're APs for Walt Disney World. We have DVC. My husband jokes that it's like ye holy Disney. So we trust Disney to be able to take us internationally. Just like, I don't know, it's just so exciting. We just trust that an ABD would have been the best way to do a first international trip.
That will be exciting. But you did say you have a bit of a pre-trip before the ABD. So let's start talking through the different steps.
Yes. Oh, and I do have one more person that's coming too. My mother is joining us just for the ABD. So not the pre or the post trip.
Okay. Well, that's exciting too.
I know, right? Okay. So Tuesday, June 13th, we fly out of Boston Logan Airport to Heathrow. And then the ABD starts Friday, June 16th.
Okay. Got it. So you have a few days before that begins.
Exactly. And my flight on Tuesday the 13th is an overnight. It's a 6.5-hour flight. But because of the time difference, we get into London at, it's like 7 o'clock in the morning.
Are you landing on June 13th or June 14th?
14th.
Okay. Got it. So you land on Wednesday.
Mm-hmm.
And what is your plan? Because you're going to have some jet lag.
I know. And I had booked the overnight thinking that we would nap on the plane and it would be great. And I have so many regrets already. I mean, maybe the excitement will help that morning, but I think it's going to be a tough day. I did book a bus tour that it's not a hop on, hop off. It's just like a regular bus tour that includes a traditional English tea. And that's like right around lunchtime. My thought is that we're just gonna be so excited when we land around 7. We're gonna be running around like the hotel, dropping off our bags, like seeing things locally. And then by lunchtime, we're probably gonna crash. I don't expect that our rooms are gonna be ready. So my thought is the bus tour is kind of a relaxing, chill drive around London. The bus tour is about an hour and a half. Do our English tea, and maybe it's like a calm way to do the afternoon. I'm a little nervous with the kids, honestly. I don't know how exhausted they're going to be. So it's probably going to be an early night, right?
Mm-hmm. Okay. So bus tour that includes traditional tea, some rest time, early night.
Yes. Yes.
All right. And then what are you doing on Thursday, the 15th?
The Warner Brothers Studio Tour, which is a bucket list item for all of us.
All right. That's fun.
Oh, I'm so excited. We booked a 10:30 spot. That was the earliest I can get. And it's a little bit outside of London. So there'll be some travel to get there. And I included what they called another tea, an afternoon pre-peed tea that you do in the Hogwarts Great Hall. Like,
Mm-hmm.
how much cooler can that get? Right.
Mm-hmm.
And then I have nothing planned for Thursday night because I'm worried about jet lag. Still worried about jet lag. I'm thinking it'll take, I mean, what do you think? Maybe like 2 days, 3 days to kind of settle in.
Yeah. Hopefully you'll be caught up by this time.
Fingers crossed, right? And then if we feel adventurous, maybe we'll go see a play. Maybe we'll check out the town. But the big thing is definitely the WB tour.
Yes, that will be really fun. I'm excited to hear about that. I think that's a bucket list probably for a lot of people.
Right. And we've been watching all the Harry Potter movies like this last week. So the kids are like, "Oh, I wonder what outfits we're going to see. I wonder what set designs we're going to see." Like my kids are young, like I said, 10 and 8, but they're old enough to understand like studios and sets
Yeah.
and, it's really exciting. It's really cool.
Yeah, they're at great ages because they're not toddlers or babies, but they're also not teenagers that with their own set of difficulties. So
Exactly. And my daughter, my 10-year-old, she is planning on bringing her Ravenclaw robe. She is a proud Ravenclaw. My son is a Hufflepuff. So it'll be fun to take pictures with her around the tour.
that's cute. So I have some general questions about ABD planning. So are
Yes.
there Facebook groups for ABDs like this, like there are for cruises?
There are. I did not find one for my specific trip. I was only able to find a general London Paris tour, which
Mhm.
still that was good because I could ask some questions like, how did you do ride sharing there? Any recommendations for things to do outside or before the EBD, which is actually the bus tour that I booked for that Wednesday where I got that recommendation. Someone else had done it and they said, "Oh, this is a great bus tour with kids. So go do this one."
Yeah, that makes sense. I guess cruises have thousands of people, whereas ABDs have a couple dozen. So you wouldn't necessarily
Exactly.
have enough for a Facebook group for everyone. So is the general advice, again, I'm comparing this to cruise planning. So on
Mhm.
cruises, you usually want to arrive the day before to, make sure you're there when the cruise departs. Is the general advice for an ABD like this to arrive a couple days ahead to give you enough time to adjust?
I think it probably so part of why we decided to go early was because we wanted to do the WB tour. That's something that we've been talking about for years, right?
Hmm.
So that was one motivation. The second motivation was like a little bit of the jet lag I was worried about. So the
Hmm.
ABD, the first day of your ABD is always just a dinner. So at least for this one, I don't know about other ABDs, but
Hmm.
since it's just a dinner, isn't a huge motivation to go super early. So my mom, who, like I said, is flying in just to do the ABD, is coming in actually Friday morning. And part of that reason is she didn't want to, spend too much money ahead because Shannon ABDs are so expensive, and I mean, the ABD really is supposed to be mostly all inclusive. So, I mean, I read a lot of stuff on the group of some people coming a little early, but not everybody does. Just for us, it made sense with the kids.
Okay. So this was your choice. I do think
Mhm.
that time adjustment is probably going to be important.
I think so too, especially going there. I imagine coming back, it might be a little bit easier,
Mm.
but I'm a little nervous about it. Hopefully, everyone surprises me and it's not a big deal.
Yeah. Kids are resilient.
They really are.
They'll be okay. Okay. So your mom arrives on Friday, June 16th, and the ABD starts with a dinner.
Exactly. And during the day, like, so to prepare for this trip, we've been watching like things to do in London, things to do in Paris, stuff on YouTube with the kids. And one of the videos we saw talked about the Natural History Museum in London. So during the day, the plan is to go see the museum because there's like a big dinosaur exhibit and there's like a gem exhibit. I'm not really sure how else to describe that, but it's just
Mhm.
like, yeah, I don't know, like natural stone exhibit that the kids are excited about. So we'll spend the day doing that. And then we'll have our welcome dinner. And my mom should be at our hotel. Oh, which by the way, we booked the same hotel as the ABD. So we didn't have to move.
Mhm.
So keeping everything easy, right?
And is your mom in her own accommodations throughout the trip?
So the way that we did it was we did one room has 3 people and the other room has 2 people. And the hope is that the kids will go with my mom, but we'll see. She might make me stay with her and maybe my daughter. We'll see how that goes. She's traveled with us before. So I'm hoping that maybe me and my husband get some alone time and the kids will go in her room.
Yeah. Maybe you'll just do a lot of different combinations in among the 2
Mhm.
rooms.
Hopefully. We'll see. We'll see.
Okay, so after the welcome dinner, you basically have the itinerary that is preset by the ABD, right?
Exactly, exactly. And there's like a big long list of things we're doing day by day. And like part of, another reason why I booked the ABD is I tend to be in charge of all of our Walt Disney World trips, which, as you know, requires a lot of planning.
Mhm.
What I liked about ABD was I got to kind of let go of control and let someone else do all the work. And it's a little strange to relinquish that, but it's also refreshing. Do you know what I mean? Like to just follow along and they get to figure out all the times and they get to figure out where, and I can just kind of relax for the ABD portion of the trip.
Yes. Yeah. Sounds like you got a little pre and post trip planning in there, but the ABD
Exactly.
part is preset. So what is on the itinerary for Saturday, June 17th?
Okay. It says Tower of London with a Beefeater welcome, a private viewing of the Royal Crown Jewels, which is really exciting, and a boat ride on the River Thames. I think I said that right.
Mm.
Watching the videos. I think it's Thames.
Thames or Tim?
Maybe it is Tim. You might be right. I better figure that out before I go.
Okay.
A St. Paul's Cathedral tour and photos outside of Buckingham Palace. Sounds like a jam-packed day, right?
It does. It does. St. Paul's Cathedral and then pics at Buckingham.
Right.
Fun.
Like a real palace, not just
Yeah.
Cinderella's
Yeah.
castle, right?
That's right. That's right. Okay. Well, that'll be fun all around London
Mhm.
then. And then Sunday, June 18th.
Right. We have archery in the English countryside, whatever that means. My kids do archery at camp, and when they heard about this, they were like, "Mom, Dad, we're gonna beat you. It's gonna be a competition. And we're gonna win." And I was like, "Okay, sounds great." Windsor Castle, which
Mm.
is gonna be amazing. I have a note. It says it's the largest inhabited castle worldwide.
Hmm.
It's Queen Mary's dollhouse, and then dinner back at the hotel.
Okay. And then Monday, June 19th.
breakfast in London, and then we take the Euro train to Paris.
To Paris. And the nature of the ABD is they're helping with all the luggage and stuff, right?
Exactly. So we just have to kind of like back when, remember when you used to be able to tag your bags and they would just show up in your room in Disney World? It was amazing.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's kind of like that, where they sent us ahead of time these boxes that came with like backpacks and pins. And it was a really cute little gift box. And it came with these yellow tags that you wrap on your luggage. And while you do have to get your luggage from the airport, I think once you're on the ABD, they handle all of it.
All right. So you'll just pack it up in your room, tag it, and they take it from there.
I think so.
And then you'll see it in Paris.
Mm-hmm. And I don't have to deal with it. Yay, one more thing I don't have to think about, right?
That's right. So after you arrive in Paris, what's the plan?
No, I'm gonna just, I'm not gonna say it right. And hopefully listeners forgive me. It's Montmartre, or the city of Montmartre, right? And there's a funicular ride, which I had to Google what do you know what a funicular is? News to me.
I was going to guess it's a Ferris wheel. What
It's
is it?
not, but it is a good guess. It's like a little trolley that like goes up a mountain. So it's like, think of it like a mini train from what I Googled. I think that's what it is, but I'll take photos and let you know afterwards.
It's like a skyliner up a mountain.
Right, but like not in the sky, like on the ground. Right. So more like a monorail, but not, right?
A railway on a steep slope.
Exactly. That's what I think it is. We shall see. And then wine tasting and dinner, because what does one do in Paris? We drink wine.
Okay. Of course.
Right?
Okay, that sounds amazing. And then you're still in Paris on Tuesday, June 20th?
I am. We are going to do lunch inside the Eiffel Tower, which I didn't even know you could do. Like, have you ever been to Paris? I've been once, and I didn't realize that people could dine in the Eiffel Tower.
Yeah, I've not been. I did a virtual tour with some friends recently, and they took us there on bike.
That's
and
so cool.
They showed that there is like a lower end restaurant and then a higher end as well. So that's fun.
So we'll see. We'll see how that. So yeah. So it's daytime in the Eiffel Tower, and then we have a chocolate workshop where, as I understand it, you can create your own chocolates and then bring some home. And then it says dinner on your own.
Okay, dinner on your own.
Which sounds really intimidating. Isn't that silly? Like, I don't know. None of us speak French, so we've been watching YouTube videos. And I know that most people speak English, and the guides will probably direct us somewhere to go eat. But I'm so used to taking trips to like Walt Disney World or Disneyland. Like, it's bizarre to me to be somewhere that I've never been before and have to figure it out. I feel spoiled. I usually know what I'm walking into.
Yeah, I'm sure you'll figure it out, especially with the guide's help.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And then Wednesday, June 21st.
That's when we're doing a tour of the Louvre. It's a private tour. And that's something that my son is the most excited for, because he's, for one reason or another, like obsessed with the Mona Lisa. Why? This is an 8-year-old obsessed with the Mona Lisa. Then it's a tour of the Paris Opera House and lunch and dinner on our own. So 2 adventurous things.
That is fun. Tour. I am fascinated by your son loving it, but I love that he loves it.
He is. I don't even know. I mean, he must have learned about it in school or something.
Okay. And then the 22nd.
A tour of Versailles. Now, I went to Versailles with my mom. So I went to Paris with my mom in 2015, and we got to see Notre Dame in Versailles and the Eiffel Tower. And we got to go up in Notre Dame before it burned, luckily. And Versailles was my favorite part of the trip. And I am so excited for my family to see Versailles, because there's like the main castle, and then there's a separate part of it. There's like this little quaint, almost like a mini village that looks like the cartoon version of Beauty and the Beast in real life.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm excited. So there's supposed to be a bike ride, which I'm not a big bike rider. I understand that we could walk through the garden and do Versailles. And Versailles is actually probably one of the things I'm most excited for.
So if you went in 2015, you're somewhat familiar with it.
I am. Like, and my mom went with me. It was me and my mom, my mom and I. But this will be different. I'm so excited. Like, I know you have a family too. Like when you go and you do something, you're like, oh, I can't wait for my family to see this. That's how I feel about going to Paris. Like all the things, I'm like, oh, I can't wait. And now they're actually coming with me. So it'll be great.
Yeah, but you figured out dinner then on that trip. So I have a feeling you'll figure it out for your family too.
We did a lot of bread and cheese, which, wine, bread, and cheese, that's what one does in Paris, right?
The stakes feel higher when you have your kids with you.
It's so true. Oh, and something else to mention, my daughter is a vegetarian. And that adds a whole different kind of complexity. Luckily, she doesn't have any allergies, but she can be the hardest to find food for at times, depending on where we are. I have a feeling that we'll be okay because I don't know, Europe seems to be a little bit more in the know with like vegetarian diets from what I Googled, but we'll see. We'll see what happens.
I empathize. My daughter was a pescatarian, which is almost the same thing for most of her childhood. So
Really?
there was yes, listen, she learned to cook very young because sometimes she had to
Good.
figure out her food when everybody else was eating meat. But I'm sure you'll figure it out.
Yes.
On the 22nd, anything other than the things you've mentioned so far?
Nope. That's it. The bike ride and Versailles.
Okay. And then Friday the 23rd.
So that's the last day of the ABD. So that's when my mom is going to be going home. And this is when we go to Disneyland Paris.
Okay. And what are your plans? How did those days go?
Okay, so it's Friday, we go to Disneyland Paris and we leave on Monday. We are staying at Disney Hotel New York, the Art of Marvel. And my kids don't know about this part of the trip.
What do they think's happening?
I don't they haven't pieced together yet that the ABD ends on Friday and we don't leave till Monday. And like I told you before, like we're Walt Disney World annual pass holders, we're DPC members. My kids, they don't need a map. They know how to Disney, right? But they have no idea that we're going to Disneyland Paris. And I'm excited to be able to surprise them, hopefully, because you can't surprise them. Like at a young age, I would try to surprise them with Walt Disney World trips, but because we always went to Disney, they were like, oh, let me guess, we're going to Disney. And they would know.
Yes.
So, took it away. And they're older, but they're not so old that it's still really magical, right? And I haven't figured out how I'm going to tell the kids yet. I've actually been asking in the Patreon group, how do you think I should tell my kids? And I haven't come up with a great answer yet. I'm kind of hoping maybe the tour guides will come up with something with me to try to surprise them. But it might just be, oh, we're putting our luggage in this car. Guess what? We're not going to the airport. Maybe they'll see, I don't know, is there Disneyland Paris signs? When you drive to Orlando? I have no idea, right?
So you're going to be like, grandma's leaving, we're staying. All right. Well, that'll be fun. You'll have to let us know how the surprise turns out. But your destination is Disney Hotel New York.
Yes.
Anything else that you're doing at Disneyland Paris on the 23rd?
We have a dinner reservation at Pim Kitchen, which is at the Studios Park.
Pim Kitchen at Studios Park.
So there's a couple things that you can do at Disney Hotel New York. I guess they have some photo ops and meet and greets in the actual hotel. So I think we'll try to get accustomed to the hotel a little bit, put our bags away if our room's open, and then go over to the park. And I have a list of must-do things. So we have half day Friday, Saturday all day, Sunday all day to do Disneyland Paris, right? And we've never been to an international park. So we have me and my husband put together a list of these are the things we absolutely have to do while we're there. But it'll also be like the kids trip too. So we have some ideas. If they have radically other ideas, we'll probably go along with what the kids want just because it's not worth a fight. And we're going to be happy no matter what, right?
Mm-hmm. All right. But on this particular day, you have dinner at
Yes,
the park, and then you'll have 2 full days to do the parks, like the rides and attractions and stuff.
exactly. So I don't know. Like I've been trying to pull up fireworks times and show times, and it's a lot harder to find
Mhm.
Disneyland Paris stuff than Walt Disney World or Disneyland California stuff I'm finding. So I have some general ideas. Like, so that Friday, we're probably going to want to do some of the must do stuff to get it out of the way. Like, I'm thinking there's a couple like Crush's Coaster, maybe Flight Force, a couple of rides that we don't have in the US.
Mhm.
And then do dinner. And then I want to go to Disneyland Park to see the drone show, which I've heard amazing things about.
Very jealous.
I don't think like, so it's so hard to, do you know, I don't think there's a fireworks show at the Studios Park. I think it's just at the Disneyland Paris Park, right?
I don't know.
I think so. I think that's the case because I've been Googling it and I can't find otherwise. So that's the plan right now. Some rides that afternoon/evening, dinner at Pim Kitchen, which is different than Pim's over in Disneyland Park. The kitchen in Disneyland Paris is like a sit down restaurant. And then maybe go over and see the drone show.
Okay. That sounds really fun. The biggest issue I've heard about Disneyland Paris is food.
Yeah.
So is that a concern or no?
Well, so we bought the half board food, like the food portion of what they call the dining plan over at Disneyland Paris. So we have a dinner booked for Friday, Saturday, and Sunday.
Mhm.
I think they've now added mobile ordering to most of the quick service places there. And my hope is that because we're so accustomed to mobile ordering in the States, that it won't be too much of a learning curve to figure it out there, right?
Mhm.
But
Mhm.
like the app, I don't know if it's just because I'm on this side of the world or what, but the Disneyland Paris app has not been cooperating for me when I try to test things out. Like you can go on the Disney World app today and like pretend you're mobile ordering
Mhm.
at Pecos Bells, right?
Mhm.
And yeah, I haven't been able to do that in Disneyland Paris. It like crashes on me. But I don't know. My hope is that when I'm there on their Wi-Fi, will be okay. And worst case, you know what? We live on Mickey bars. There's worse things in the world, right? Like, I think my kids would be happy with that plan. And Mickey bars are vegetarian. So,
That's right. I was gonna say the food seems to be an issue, and then you've got your daughter as a vegetarian, so
mm,
you have to let us know exactly. But I think having dinner reservations will definitely help, so you have that for sure.
mhm.
Do you have a plan which park you're going to on Saturday, June 24th?
The plan is Disneyland Park. And we have dinner there at Algraba Cafe, which just went through a renovation. And that's like Mediterranean. So that actually, like, I think that's going to be the best pet for
Mhm.
Addie to find good food because lots of beans, hummus, etc. Right.
Mhm.
And it's going to be the whole day there, just doing a lot of different rides. Oh, one thing I want to mention. So we have talked about doing international parks as a family for a couple of years now. And we always said to the kids, oh, like when you're older, maybe we'll bring our grandkids, like, teasing them. It's going to be like a billion years from now. Right. And we always talked about like the one thing we really wanted to do at Disneyland was to see the dragon under the castle. Right.
Mhm.
Like
Mhm.
that's what one does in Disneyland Paris. And guess what closed when we're going to be
No.
there?
No.
Yeah. But it's like, of course. So maybe I just have to find an excuse to go back someday, Shannon.
Yeah, that's a bummer though, because that would be on my list too. It's such a unique aspect of this park.
It's iconic, right? Like, so there is two things. It's the Disneyland Paris Pirates we really wanted to do, and the Dragon Under the Castle we really wanted to do. Like when I say we, I mean my husband and I, because the kids don't really know about the trip. And both of those things are going to be closed. So I'm a little bummed, but hey, that
Mm.
means we have more time to do other things, right?
Yeah, I guess so. Are you guys using the Premier Access while you're there?
No, I am. Okay. So like I said, we go to Walt Disney World all the time. I really don't like paying for Genie Plus. I understand why people do it and why people put in the extra for the lightning lanes, but because we go so much, like it's just not really worth it for us. And I am just like so adamantly opposed to the Premier Pass that I'm not going to buy it.
Mhm.
But if the crowds are really bad, then you know what? I think I might just have to suck it up. But I looked at the cost and it's going to be something like $200, like
Wow.
per person.
No
That's
way.
crazy, isn't it? Like,
That's a lot of money.
it's a lot of money, especially for a family of four. But when I look at the list of rides, so if I'm going to just count them really quick. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So there's like 6 must-do rides in the Disneyland Paris park, and there's roughly 6 rides at the Walt Disney Studios park. I mean, even if you're waiting for an hour at each one, like we should be able to do it all. The other thing is some of the shows over there are supposed to be really, really good. So I do have a couple shows that we want to see, but I'm really hoping that 2.5 days is plenty without paying for the premiere. 'Cause, I mean, we're already shelling out too much. It just doesn't seem reasonable.
Yeah, that is a lot. Well, hopefully you won't have to wait an hour for everything.
Right? Well, we'll see. We'll see. If I look at my list, there's a couple must-do things like I know everyone will be excited about to do their Big Thunder and their Phantom Manor, which is like their Haunted Mansion. My favorite ride at Disney World, other than Guardians, now Guardians is taking the top, but my second favorite ride is Tower of Terror.
Mhm.
And my family refuses to do Tower of Terror, much to my chagrin. I haven't been able to do it in several years. The only way I can do it is when I do a girls' trip and my friends will go with me, or if I do it solo, which I'm willing to do. But since we're in Disneyland Paris and it's a little bit different, like I'm hoping I can talk my family into it. But everything I've read is that it's a little bit scarier. I don't think my family is going to do it, but I hope they will. I don't know.
You
Cross
can
your fingers for me.
do it by yourself.
I mean, I think I might be willing to because I don't. Maybe there's a single rider. No, there's probably not a single rider line, but I think I might be willing to because who knows if I'm ever going to get back to that park, right?
Yeah, I would totally do it.
Yeah, we'll see. Maybe on one of their Mickey Bar trips, I can go into Tower of Terror, the Paris version, because that's on my. I mean, especially since I'm not going to see the dragon, I have to be able to go to Tower of Terror, right?
Yeah, I think you should do it.
Okay, we'll see.
For sure. So Sunday, June 25th, are you back at studios?
I'm back at studios for dinner for sure. We're gonna probably. I want to see how much I get done at Disneyland Paris Park. If I have to do the morning at one park and then the afternoon back at studios, that's fine.
Mm.
Oh, and the other thing is they do have like an early morning entry, similar like we do in Florida.
Mm.
That's 1 hour, so it's a good amount of time. I'm hoping we can get some rides out of the way on Saturday and Sunday morning.
Okay. That an hour is better than 30 minutes.
Then, and for that dinner we're doing on Sunday is at Remy's, which I'm like Remy is like Ratatouille is my daughter's favorite movie, so it's going to be really cute.
Okay, that sounds fun. And then you leave on Monday, June 26th.
I do. We're taking the Tragical Express back to Charles de Gaulle Airport and going home. My flight is, I think it's at 11:30 in the morning. I haven't been able to figure out, like I do have the transportation booked. I'm not sure how early they want us on the buses. Like I know, for example, in Florida, it's like 3 hours ahead. You have to get on one of those buses, right? So we'll see. I'm not sure how early I have to leave the hotel. We're going to have to play it by ear and I'll have to talk to the people in the lobby when I get there to figure that. Peace out.
All right. Is there any part of this trip that we haven't talked about yet?
I'm scrolling through my list. I have a 3-page list. Like, and this is the trip that I didn't have to plan that much. Imagine.
Planners are going to plan, Linda.
So there's a couple there's a couple of nights in Paris and a couple nights in London where there's nothing booked through the ABD. It just says that you'll get recommendations from your tour guide. So that's like like the planner in me, I actually went online and I asked for recommendations. Like, should I book something in Paris one of these nights? And the feedback I'm getting is that I really don't have to. The planner in me is like, but what are we going to do? Where are we going to be? What are we going to know it's going to look like? Like, where are we going to go? So I'm struggling a little bit with that, but that's okay. It'll be okay. It's going to be great. And going through my list. Oh, the other thing I wanted to mention, in case there's other people that are interested in ABDs, we were supposed to have something that's called like a junior adventurers dinner, where the tour folks take the kids and then the adults go have dinner somewhere else. So it's like prepaid babysitting, which I was really looking forward to. And that's not happening on our trip. And I read someplace else that they started taking that away very recently from a lot of these trips. So I don't know what the scoop is with that. Like maybe they're just not offering them anymore. But if that's something you were planning on, it was listed on my ABD when I booked it, and that's been canceled for the trip. But I think that's it. I feel like I've talked your ear off. That's a lot of information.
No, it's been fine. I do think that's a bummer though. If part of your reason for booking is, oh, good, we'll have some, adult time as well as family time, and then they took that away.
It's a little disappointing. That being said, my mother is there. I mean, she doesn't usually babysit my kids, but I'd probably convince her to let us go to the pub one night and stay with the kids. And the other thing that my ABD, like people that I've been talking to have told me is that there's a lot of kids on this trip that are around my kids' ages. And that's really, really exciting. I can just like, when you go on cruise line, the kids just all kind of swarm together and they become like a mass, right? I'm excited for them to hopefully make some friends and experience this with some peers. And I think that like another reason why we wanted to do ABD, because I think that's a completely different experience than us just going on a family trip to say London, which we could have done. It's just, I can't wait. I can't wait. I hope that everything is just wonderful. The only thing I can't really control is the weather, right? So I think it's going to be great.
Yes. Well, I think it sounds really fun. I think your kids are at great ages. I love that your mom's coming. So there'll be a lot to talk about when you get back. Hope you guys have a great time.
I'm excited. And I'll be taking lots of photos so I can share with Patreons. It's going to be great.
Yes. All right. Well, I'll talk to you when you get back.
Yay. Thank you.
Welcome back from your trip, Linda.
Hi, Shannon. How are you?
Good. We are spending our Saturday, July 1st together talking about your trip. How are you feeling?
I am good. I tell my friends that I am still French because I like to go to sleep at 8 o'clock and wake up at 4 o'clock in the morning, which is interesting. But you know what? It's fine. We'll adjust somehow, and it was worth it.
All right. Well, we have a lot of days to get through, so let's dive in. You told us that on Tuesday, June 13th, you were flying out of Boston to Heathrow and you were landing the next day, June 14th.
Yes. The thing that I did that I didn't know about when I talked to you was we used the Framingham Logan Express lot for anyone that's flying out of Logan. And we picked Logan because there were direct flights out of Logan instead of usually we fly out of Bradley where there was no direct flights. We used the Framingham Logan Express, which was incredible. It's $7 a night to park there. It's a lot that's affiliated with the airport. So they have a shuttle that runs every 30 minutes and brings you directly to your terminal. I literally cannot recommend the express lots enough. Like it was amazing. And for the shuttle, kids are free to ride and adults are $18 round trip. So instead of spending an exorbitant amount of money on parking directly at the airport and then trying to figure out how to get to your terminal, go to one of the express slots. I think there's 3 or 4, park there, use the shuttle and do that because it was outstanding.
I'm very jealous that that is an option. As far as I know, we don't have that here other than the parking spot, which is a daily fee.
Ugh,
Eh,
yeah.
and not a shuttle cost, but a daily fee, just like a regular parking lot. How was the flight?
So we had significant delays. Our flight was supposed to go out at 7:30. We were supposed to board at 6:30. And for the first time in our lives, we were at the airport on time. Usually we're scrambling. And it was just not good. We didn't get the first delay until the boarding time. So as we were supposed to be boarding, like literally we were going to the bathroom, washing our hands one last time before we board the flight. That's when we started getting notifications of the delays. And the delay was different depending on where you looked. We flew Delta, and this was my first time flying Delta. And I have to tell you, it was a little bit frustrating. So the flight was supposed to go out at 7:30. At 11:30 at night, the gate staff were promising us that we would get out by midnight, and that did not happen.
Oh, man. And you timed it so that you guys could sleep overnight while you flew, right?
Exactly, exactly. In the airport, like the kids couldn't sleep. They were frustrated. But it did lead to some good stuff because, well, my daughter lost her tooth at the airport, which was interesting because she had to find a spot so that she couldn't lose it. And there was a lot of talk of, well, where am I going to put the tooth? Am I going to put it under my pillow on the plane? What if I don't sleep? Does the ferry go on an airplane? We don't know, right? And then we tried to get the kids to sleep on the floor. It was not happening. Babies were crying. It was really bad. It was really bad. Just to be honest. And I know flight delays happen all the time. It was just not something we were used to, especially because our day of travel started at like 12:30 that afternoon. So to be at the airport past midnight, still waiting to get on a flight, it was tough.
When did you actually get to go?
The plane took off a little after 1 a.m.
Mhm.
Yeah, and no one slept. The
All night?
food, yes, yes. The food was not good. Well, so also they have this flight that takes off at 1 a.m. The time difference between London and New England is 5 hours. So it's a little funny, right? It was supposed to be a 6.5 hour flight. I think it was a little less than that. I think it was like 6 hours because they tried to make up some time, but they did have two meal services. It seems like they never really turn the lights up all the way off. You know how they always keep like the aisle lights?
Mhm.
They seem kind of bright. People were miserable. Like it was just even the staff were unhappy and the food was terrible. So FYI, if you're flying Delta internationally out of Logan, at least I strongly recommend bringing your own food
Mm.
because it was completely unedible. They did have, the regular TVs. They handed out headphones and my kids watched a couple movies, but no one slept.
That is such a bummer. How did they not just pass out from exhaustion?
I know. I mean, I have no idea how they did it. I really have no clue. I think my son wound up falling asleep for like 30 minutes, but my daughter didn't sleep a week. And I really felt bad for her. But it's fine because we were going to England and it was going to be great. And one night doesn't mess up 2 weeks. So we
But
landed. Go
yeah, I was
ahead.
gonna say, by the time you landed, I'm wondering if you missed some of your plans.
We sure did. So I started, I don't know if you remember, but I had booked a bus tour with English tea
Mhm,
for noon because my flight was supposed to land at 7 a.m.,
mhm.
which one would think is plenty of time, right? But our flight didn't actually land. I'm looking at my notes until somewhere around maybe 1 o'clock in the afternoon.
Mhm.
I had started emailing and calling the company that I had booked the bus tour with as soon as I got that first delay because I had women's intuition. This is making me nervous. Let me try to move the bus tour a little bit later. And ultimately what happened was we never got a hold of anyone. Someone didn't call me back till 4:30 p.m. English time. I don't know, British Standard Time, I think it is. And they did nothing for us. They basically said if we wanted to move the tour, there was no tours left that day, obviously, because they didn't call me till 4:30, right? If we wanted to move the tour, there was only one spot available that fit within our ABD itinerary. And they were going to charge me $134 to move the table to the bottom deck.
Mm.
Yeah. And there was no refunds. So thankfully, I have trip insurance and I will be trying to submit to see if I can get a refund for that. But we spent over $300 on that tour and tea. So I cannot recommend booking something same day as you arrive now on an international trip. Because what if you don't get there?
Mm-hmm.
Lesson
Right.
learned, right?
Yeah, it's always a possibility. So then, given the fact that you didn't sleep on the flight, is that all you wanted to do at this point?
Sure. Yes. Yeah. So, okay. So, well, we get to the airport, right? Our bags were also delayed. And the other thing, like this bus company I was trying to call, and I was also trying to call ABD because our original landing time, like I said, was 7 a.m. and they have a driver waiting for you. And I'm like, well, obviously this driver isn't going to wait 6, 7 hours for us, right? So I'm calling ABD, I'm calling their emergency line. It took me a while to figure out how to even call internationally because I'd never done that before with my iPhone. And the emergency line told me the driver's probably left. They only wait 1 hour after your bags have been delivered. So worst case, just go out to the cab stand, get a cab, get to the Kimpton, and we'll take care of it later. So I was like, okay, sounds good. My family's exhausted. We're cranky. We're tired. We walk out of the airport, and with a bright orange sign is a woman with a smile that says Adventures by Disney. And she goes, "Are you the Eklund family? You have had quite the night." And I
Yes,
was
because she was tracking your flight.
like they should be, right? So it was all fine. The driver got us to the Kimpton. We got to the hotel. As you know, we had a pre-stay that I had booked. Now there's different levels at the Kimpton Fitzroy. We did have to book 2 rooms because we had 4 people, but I booked the like cheaper hotel rooms for our pre-stay, right? And one of the rooms was ready, but one wasn't by the time we got to the hotel. And that was somewhere between 4 and 4:30. So they gave us the room keys for one room. We dropped off the bags and immediately, because it's only one king bed, we couldn't even sleep if we wanted to, right? We immediately left the hotel and honestly had one of the best nights we had in our 2-week trip, despite no sleep.
Wow, what made it a good night?
So, right around the corner from the hotel, there's this little shopping area. It's called Brunswick Center. It's less than a quarter mile from the hotel. The concierge recommended a restaurant there for us to eat. So we eat at the restaurant, which was the best meal we had the entire trip. If anyone's going to the area, please check out Writing House Bloomsbury was outstanding. But that wasn't the part that made it good for the kids, obviously. For the kids, there was an arcade in that square, which was the cleanest arcade I've ever seen in my life. And there was no one in the arcade. So it was like a free for all for my children.
Mm-hmm.
And it was so much fun. And they even had, for anyone who's like a millennial, they had DDR machines, which I haven't seen DDR machines in like 15 years.
The
Um,
best.
yes, they had 2 of them and they were like brand new ones. And I wound up going down an internet like loophole learning about how there's no more DDR machines in the States. They're only in like Japan and Europe. So that was fun, right? And they also had a Japanese market, which my daughter is obsessed with Japanese culture. So that was just amazing for her. And there was a little restaurant that had Japanese pancakes. I've never even heard of them before. They're like these fluffy pancakes and they come with ice cream and sprinkles and all sorts of toppings. The kids had like the best night ever because the weather was gorgeous. It was cool. It wasn't crowded and it didn't seem like a touristy place. It seemed very much like a locals place. Like there was like coffee shops, there was a supermarket there was that Japanese market. And it really felt like we were just part of the flow in London. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
That was really fun. One thing I want to point out in this square was when we were eating our desserts, we sat outside because they have these big tables in the middle of the square, which is really nice. And I'd taken a bunch of phones because, like taking out my phone, taking a bunch of pictures. And I'd left my phone on the table. And at one point, there was a woman who was next to us who yelled out, ma'am, pick up your phone, pick up your phone. Because there was like a pickpocket who was coming to the table to grab my phone.
Mm.
And that never occurred to me because in Connecticut, where I live, like we don't really worry about those things, right? But you're in a big city, and there's a lot of travelers there, and you will get targeted if you're not careful. So definitely, like, gentlemen, wear shorts with zipper pockets. Ladies, zip up your bags. Don't leave your phone out on the table. And I'm sure that people that travel internationally a lot already know that, but I didn't even think of it, and it made total sense.
Yes. That I'm glad someone alerted you. So did you guys stay up until bedtime then?
Yeah, well, we got back to the hotel probably at like 7 o'clock. So it wasn't too late, passed out. And then it was, I mean, the rooms were very comfortable. The kids slept in just a little bit, right? But we couldn't sleep in too much because we had our Harry Potter tour the next day.
Yes. So let's talk about that. How did that go? How'd you get there?
So I had scheduled an Uber the night before because I had read that you want to be there at opening. So the Uber costs £55. I scheduled to pick up at the Kimpton at 9 a.m. and we arrived at the studios tour at 9:50. Our tickets for the tour were for 9:30, which was the earliest I could get. I don't remember if we talked about this last time, but if you plan on visiting the studios tour, you need to book it as soon as you know your dates. Like, it's not something you can book even a month in advance because they do sell out. So these tickets I had gotten, I want to say it was in November, and I already couldn't get the first slot. I got the 10:30 slot, 10 being the first one.
Mm-hmm.
So we got there at 9:50 and lined up in the security queue. It wasn't opened yet because it opens at 10. And there were probably like 30 people in front of us. It wasn't bad at all. We got through security, got in, and even though our tickets were for 10:30, we just went through the tour immediately. They didn't really stop us. And the tour was exactly what everyone said it was. It's just absolutely fantastic. Harry Potter fans are going to love it. It does feel a lot like a museum versus interactive stuff. There are two or three interactive areas with green screens, but if you've done like the Orlando parks or the California parks, you're not going to be too impressed with their green screen stuff. But the artifacts and the stages that they have set up are absolutely fascinating, and Potter fans should definitely go.
Okay. Big endorsement then for that.
Yeah, so we spent 5 hours at the studio tour, including we had a noon tea that we had booked ahead of time with our tickets. The tea was just okay. It was cute. It didn't taste very good. I don't regret doing it, but when I was in the cafe, so it had booked it looked like it said something like have afternoon tea in the Great Hall. It is not in the Great Hall. It is in the cafeteria.
Mm.
And the cafeteria, I will say, for other people planning on going, seems like it has a lot of options that are kid friendly. I didn't check out the menus like up close because obviously we already had lunch booked, but it did seem like there were a lot of options. And part of my logic for booking the tea was I wasn't sure what kind of food options there would be. And there are lots of options. There's cute, like, food-based souvenirs. I think I saw like a popcorn bucket that was the night bus or something. There's there's things there for everyone. So you don't have to book the tea. I think you can get food otherwise.
Mm-hmm.
And the other thing I would say, if you are going to the tour, is definitely get there at opening or just before, like we did, because by 11:30 noon, the place was mobbed. And school is still in session in Europe, so, or at least in London. So there was a lot of school groups. So hordes of like 30 kids running around the tour, which was just very loud, very chaotic. So we were glad that we got there early because we could kind of take our time with the first half of the tour without fighting the crowds.
So rope dropping works yet again.
Mhm. I mean, Walt Disney World gives you skills for life, right?
That's right. We can apply them everywhere we go. What did you do after this tour?
Okay, so we took an Uber back, but I did not pre-schedule it. I did not have to wait. The Uber was there immediately and it was only 35 pounds. So FYI, I saved 20 pounds without scheduling it. So go ahead and do that. Don't worry about it. You'll find an Uber if you plan on doing it. We went down to concierge and asked for recommendations for dinner because, oh, the night before we booked tickets to see Wicked on the West End.
Oh, I don't remember us talking about that beforehand.
We didn't. We literally booked them when we were in London.
Okay. Did you know that you were going to try for that?
Absolutely not. It
Oh,
was
okay.
it was completely random. It was when we were trying to figure out where to go the night before. We were like going through some of the guides. There's like pamphlets at the hotels. And one of the things was like, go see a show. And we talked to the kids about which show they'd want to see. And we got tickets for Wicked, which the seats we got were actually outstanding. The cost of the tickets are what you would expect on the West End, which is equivalent to Broadway, right?
Right.
And this was my kid's first like Broadway production show.
And how'd it go?
It was amazing. Amazing. Cannot recommend enough. My husband and I saw Wicked the year after it opened with the original cast, and it rivaled that show.
Wow.
Yes.
What a nice first experience for the kids.
Right. And now, like, I'm like, I guess I can't take them to town theater because they'll be disappointed, right?
I think you mix it up. You do local, you do Broadway, you do everything. It's all good.
Right. But it was very, very, very cool. So we went to Wicked. We had gotten food. Okay. So if you're going to go do a show at the West End, we went there and looked for food close by. It was chaos. Don't do that. If you're looking for a quick meal, have food close to the hotel and then go to the West End. If you know you're going in advance, maybe you could book reservations early, but we try to get reservations through concierge that night and we could not do it.
Okay. Good to know. Because it's just touristy.
It's super touristy, super touristy. And there were a lot of school groups there too. It was interesting to see like all the locals like doing this kind of stuff too.
I am, as a person from small town Kansas, I'm a little jealous that their field trips looked like, Harry Potter and Broadway type stuff.
It's what's available, right? You're going to school in London. I mean, all these little kids are out having fun.
Amazing.
So we took a cab back to the hotel. I have to tell you that the black cab drivers in London are so friendly. That night, we basically had our own private tour. This gentleman told us everything about London and taught us the right way to say English words. And it was awesome. It was a really good night.
Good. And was that kind of the end of this day then?
Yes, it was so late. We were so tired.
Well, so did you feel like you were adjusted to the time zone?
I think, yes. I think actually almost immediately, but we were tired perpetually throughout the whole trip. And I don't know that that was the time zone. I think it was just because of how active and how jam-packed these itineraries are, Shannon.
Listen, I didn't mention that beforehand because I wanted to see how you felt, but it is the jam-packedness of the itineraries that scares me.
It really, and they do give you downtime, which we'll get into, but I mean, it's a lot. And I think the families that didn't come early regretted it. And I will say now, even though we're talking about the beginning, I wish we had had one extra day in London and one extra day in Paris, even though we had pre and post trips already.
Yes. But I think that is good information because you don't want to come in the day before and then have trouble adjusting to the very busy itinerary.
Exactly. So when we got back to the hotel on that Thursday night, there were letters with our names on it from our guides saying, welcome to the hotel. We're looking forward to seeing you. And that was a nice little touch. Oh, the Kingdom Fitzroy is incredible. It is one of the nicest hotels I've ever stayed at. They had popcorn and chips and cookies in all the rooms and waters. If you forget anything, you can borrow it. Like my hair tools, like my straightener and my daughter's hair curler didn't work even with our converters. So we just went down to the front desk and they gave us some to borrow.
Mm-hmm.
They
All
were really
right.
nice.
The next day, your mom was coming.
Yes, yes. So Friday morning, we had planned on going to one of the museums, which, by the way, pretty much most, if not all, the museums in London are free. You just have to book a time, which is
Mm-hmm.
very nice. My mom, we decided we wanted to wait for my mom. We let the kids sleep in. Oh, every night we had breakfast, excuse me, every morning we had breakfast at the hotel because it was included with our stay. And it's also included at the hotel with the EBD. And the breakfast never changes. So if you're bored with it, go somewhere else that morning. Don't expect to go and to see something different. It's always the same breakfast, but it's fine. It was good. My mom got in at 11:30. She came with us to the museum. It was a natural history museum. No, natural. Oh my gosh, I don't remember which one.
I
I think
just wrote down History Museum.
I think it's a natural history museum. There's one in South Kensington, which we cabbed over to. It was too hot, Shannon. Those old buildings don't have AC.
Mm-hmm.
It was like, Florida in the parks. I did not bring my cooling towels. I did not bring my hand fans. And this was one of the days where I wish we had.
Yes.
So we only hung out there for like an hour, then took a cab back to the hotel and just kind of chilled. We, took a nap. We had our welcome dinner was at 6:30 back in the hotel. So we kind of took the afternoon to relax. And we also had to change rooms because then we were moving to the ABD room. The ABD rooms, the way they booked us, so they were almost twice the size of the rooms that we had for our pre-trip because they were obviously the more deluxe ones, right?
Mm-hmm.
But the rooms, so we had two rooms, three people in one room, two people in another, were on the same floor, but in completely different areas. So after I got into the room, I went down to the front desk and I was like, oh, hey, listen, we were supposed to have connecting rooms. And they said there was no rooms available. If I wanted to move, I could move tomorrow and my room would be downgraded. And I was like, that's fine because we all need to be close by. Oh, what wound up happening was my mom stayed with the kids most of the time and me and Greg were in the second room. But like she wasn't like a babysitter, right? Like she was able to go do things on her own at night. She was able to come back when she wanted to. Like there are children. So like we were putting them to bed. We were making sure their showers were done. And all of our stuff is like mixed up together. So we weren't really planning on having like the way our suitcases were two completely different hotel rooms on opposite sides of the hotel, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So that was the complexity that was frustrating. So we wound up moving twice in the Kempton. One time we got locked out of our rooms. It was kind of chaos. And our rooms were downgraded significantly because we wanted them to be close together. But it is what it is. And that was the choice that we made. And I would say if you're a family with young kids booking ABD, make sure that you have on your request that the rooms are close by or connecting as soon as possible. When I asked some of the other families on our ABD, half of them had connecting rooms and some of them had rooms on completely different floors. Which I mean, one parent could always go with one child, right? But
Mm-hmm.
you're on vacation and not everybody plans to do that, right?
Mm-hmm. That is unfortunate.
Yeah, especially when you're paying this much for a trip. But I digress. So we had Friday night was the start of the ABD. We had our welcome dinner, which was a buffet. There was like a cute little ceremony thing. I don't know, like if I should spoil it. Like, should I tell you or should I not?
And we're just going to warn people that spoilers are ahead for this ABD itinerary.
Okay, for next 20 seconds, 30 seconds, Sherlock Holmes come out and does like almost like an escape room mystery thing with the kids.
Mm-hmm.
It was very cute. The kids enjoyed it. It felt a little awkward, like with the adults. There wasn't any, like throughout the whole trip, there wasn't like icebreakers or anything. So our group, none of us, like, I don't think anyone walked away with best friends coming out of the group, right? So it was a little awkward the whole trip, but it was fine. It was fun. And at that night, they told us the itinerary for the rest of the trip, which was exactly as you and I talked about,
Mm-hmm.
last time we chatted.
Mm-hmm. So that was it, right? Does the kickoff? I am surprised there wasn't icebreakers. It feels like that's the point of a welcome dinner.
Right? And I don't know if maybe different guides do something different because I thought that I'd read somewhere in some forum that sometimes there are. Who knows, right?
But that was sort of the kickoff. And the next day, you guys were going to be heading around London.
Yes. Saturday morning, we had to meet at the shuttle bus at 7:20 in the morning. So immediately after the dinner, everyone was in bed and sleeping because it was a jam-packed day. We went to the Tower of London, we saw the Crown Jewels, we saw St. Paul's Cathedral, which was absolutely stunning. One of my highlights in London for sure. We had lunch at a restaurant, which was not good. I'm just going to say it now. The food on this trip was mediocre at best. It was
Mm-hmm.
just not good. Okay. Some of the things were a little strange, some like ABD choices. And this was one of the choices that I thought was weird. So we have a shuttle bus. And for this day, we were able to leave our stuff on the bus because we had the bus the whole day, which was awesome. Right. But like, for example, like after we were at St. Paul Cathedral, we drove at least 30 minutes to this lunch and then walked 20 minutes to get to the restaurant. And when we walked to the restaurant, there were like all these cute cafes and shops, and it was like a quintessential, you know, city, like the insides of a city that you would have wanted to see and stop and look. But we didn't. We like ran past through all these areas, had lunch that was not great, and then ran back to the bus, which made
Hmm.
no sense to me.
Yeah. I wonder if just the logistics of moving a big group, they have to have reservations and they have to
Me,
stick to a strict schedule.
it could be, it could be. And I've heard that they'd move this lunch around a little bit. So I don't, maybe they're working on finding the right place and the right location. After the lunch, we did the speedboat tour, which I didn't even know what that meant. Like, what's a high speed boat tour? But this was my kid's favorite thing we did on the ABD. And when they did like a poll at the end of the trip, like, I think this might have been everyone's favorite thing. Yes, it is. If you're going to London, book this tour. It's called Extreme Rib Adventures RAB. And I have no idea how much it costs, but there were 12 people on a boat and they start off on the River Thames. Oh, figured out how to say that, Thames. They start on the River Thames and it's like a medium speed ride and there's a guide and you get these killer views of the Eye of London and like Parliament and all these beautiful things, right? And then once you're past an area where you can do higher speeds, they go full blast and they pump up like techno music. And at the very end, they had James Bond music. And my kids, like, core memory, they were laughing and like wailing with laughter and smiling. And we just had so much fun on this boat ride. And I need to figure out if they do this in other areas because you should do this everywhere you go. It was amazing.
Good. And that's something people can book on their own, like through that company. That's
Absolutely. And there's a couple different ones. When we were on the Thames, I saw that there was an Uber boat. I don't even know what that means, but it made me laugh. There's an Uber boat. And this particular company was the Extreme Rib Adventure. And if I can find a link, I'll send it to you. And I would book it again in a heartbeat. It was well worth it.
good. That's fun. What else did you do on this busy day?
We were supposed to go to Buckingham, but we didn't because the king, I guess, was in town. So he closed the streets. We, we went back to the hotel after the boat ride. There's a pizza place that's like right around the corner from the hotel. So like, okay, so again, our morning started at like 6:30 because we had to meet for the bus at 7:20.
Mm-hmm.
And so we were all exhausted. So we just had pizza. Oh, by the way, I tried to tip at the pizza restaurant, which I know you're not supposed to do, but the kids were really nice there. I mean, like the young people working. And I tried to give him extra money and it got really awkward. And the young man was like, no, really, you don't have to. And he actually gave the coins because there was like, it's pounds in England to my son. And he's like, here, take it as a souvenir. So I would recommend to anyone going, don't bother. Don't
Mhm.
try. They don't expect it. They don't want it. The bellboys and the cabbies, I gave extra and it wasn't awkward. But at the restaurants, every time we tried to tip more, it was weird.
Which is so funny because that's how people here make most of their money.
Exactly. It's just different. It's just
Mhm.
totally different. And the other thing, I don't remember if I mentioned it earlier, but when you're eating at a restaurant anywhere in Europe, which I didn't realize even though I'd been to Paris before, you should ask for the bill when you're done with your meal. They will not say to you, would you like your check now?
Mhm.
You need to ask for it. And we realized this our first night when we were at Writing House, when three different waiters stopped by and were like, oh, can we get you anything else? And we're like, no, we're all set. He's like, okay, let us know if you need anything, and then would walk away. But the check never came
Mhm.
because they can't just bring over the check. You have to tell them, I want the check.
Mhm. Interesting.
So good to know. So we had pizza. Okay. And then the kids and Greg went off to bed. My mom really wanted to do a bus tour. And this was kind of the only night we were able to do it. The concierge at the hotel recommended big bus tours. They're these big red buses you'll see everywhere in London. There's an evening tour at 7:30. We took a taxi and got there at 7 to the pickup point, which is like down by the river. And I'm so glad we got there 30 minutes early because there was already a line and we were able to get the top deck. But if we had even waited a couple minutes longer, we wouldn't have been able to. And
Mhm.
we did buy the tickets in line at the bus stop. So that was very easy.
And how was that bus tour?
It was awesome. I wish my kids had come, but they were just way too tired. I was exhausted. Honestly, I could have gone to sleep and not done the bus tour, but I didn't want my mom to go by herself.
Mhm.
And I mean, you're in London only once, right? Or who knows? So the guide that did the bus tour was super engaging. He was funny. He was way easier to listen to than any of the local guides on our trip. Because he just made jokes the whole time, right? And I actually learned more from him than I learned on our trip. And I think it's just the nature of what we like versus the kind of trip we took. Like, it just wasn't serious. It was casual, and the tour was 2 hours, and I learned a lot. I learned a lot on that bus tour. One of the things that I learned was that in London, when you go to the pub, they cannot deny you use of the restroom. So if
Mm,
you Mhm. So if you're walking around the streets of London and you have to use the bathroom, just go into a pub and they'll let you use it.
nice. And because if you don't use those, is that I can't remember. Is that a place where they have water closets you can pay for?
Yes. Yeah. And I mean, who wants to pay to use the bathroom?
I know. Pretty normal though in all throughout Europe.
Yeah, probably, right? So
So, but that's a good tip though.
and then got back home, went to bed. That tour was only $35 or 35 euros a person. Highly recommend. Definitely do it.
All right. Well, God, that was a good evening with your mom. The next day, you were heading to the English countryside.
Yes, this morning started off a little later, which we were grateful for. I want to say it started at like 9 or 9:30. The shuttle ride to the countryside was very quiet. Everyone was very sleepy. Archery was really fun. My husband got like all bullseyes, and we have no idea why or how because he'd never done archery before. The group was split in two. One half would do the archery, and the other half did like I don't know, a session with these two gentlemen that talked about medieval fighting and what it was like. And they did a demonstration of longbows and how far they go. And they had different weaponry to show the different types. It was actually really interesting. And then once the groups were done, they swapped. When the group that had the guys that were talking about the weaponry, one of them was like older and one of them was younger in his like early 20s. At the very end of his presentation, he actually did a speech from, I don't remember which play, but it was Shakespeare. And
Hmm.
it was so moving. Like you're in the English countryside with this adorable young man dressed up like Robin Hood, holding this longbow, and he's reciting Shakespeare. It was surreal. And at that moment was the moment my daughter fell in love with Shakespeare. And it carried her through the rest of the trip, which was really
Oh,
interesting.
nice.
It was really cool. So archery would highly recommend. It was at a hotel, and I want to do some Googling to figure out what hotel it was. It just looked like a wonderful place to go and stay and be in the English countryside, like outside of London. So if I ever wind up in London again, I might try to figure out where that was because it looked really nice.
Nice. What else did you do?
We went to Windsor Castle after this, which was again closed. It wasn't supposed to be closed, but I guess I closed it that day. And it's just a funny cultural thing with having an active royal family in the country. Like you could plan on having something or buy tickets for something, and then it could just be closed that day, right? Because they decide they need to do work wherever they are. So we went to Windsor. It's like a cute little village. Because our bus tour, so the bus tour that I had booked for my family the first day of our trip was like an English tea. My daughter was like devastated that we didn't get to do it because she was really looking forward to having an English tea. And so I had talked to one of the guides earlier in the trip and I said, hey, my daughter really wants to do a tea. My mom said she wanted to do it with us. Where on this ABD can we fit in a tea? And this is where she booked ours. So our guide found us reservations at a hotel called The Leaf. And the reason she picked this place was she was familiar with it and it had air conditioning where a lot of places don't have air conditioning. And Shannon, it was like high 80s most of our trip. And early too, like earlier in the day, it would hit 80, 85. And so we had, so me, like girls and the boys split up. So grandma, me and Addie went to have our English tea at this quaint little hotel. And the boys went off and did some shopping in the market. Think of it as like, I don't know, going to the village or something, like just going and doing some shopping and seeing some stands. The boys said they got pizza from just like a pizza stand in the middle of the street. And I'm so glad that we split up because they wound up getting a whole bunch of souvenirs and having a great time. And we loved our tea. Like, just to be clear, we absolutely loved it. I'm glad we did it. But it took up the entire time we had at Windsor. It took about an hour and 15 minutes. And by the time we were done, we had to go back to the shuttle. Like we were at Windsor for, I think they gave us an hour and a half to do whatever we wanted there.
Wow.
Yeah. And that was also the gist of any time there was like go explore, you really didn't have a lot of time. Everything it's weird because you were exhausted because you were running all over the place. But at the same time, it never felt like you had enough time to see anything. So it's just like it's a juxtaposition because you have time, but you don't. It was interesting. It was like, and in hindsight, like days after the trip, I'm like, I wonder if we should have made some different choices. But this one was a good choice. I'm glad we did the tea.
Yeah, it's frustrating though because you don't know until you're there. And
Yes.
it's all hindsight. So
Thank you for that because like I worry about like expressing some of those feelings because I feel like people will say, well, you should have known, you saw the itinerary, or in the moment, you should have known if you weren't comfortable, you should have gone to something else. But it's hard to do if you've never experienced these things before, right?
yeah, even if you read the itinerary, you don't exactly know, like, oh, that would have been a better fit for our family.
Exactly, exactly. And I did feel that way a couple different places in this trip. But so far where we are in this day, oh my gosh, it was already Sunday. We were good. So we couldn't go into Windsor Castle. I kind of wish they had just kind of skipped Windsor, but whatever, it's fine. Instead, after that little shopping experience, which, like I said, me, Addie, and Grandma didn't get to do, we went to Hampton Circle Palace, which was not on the itinerary and I knew nothing about. They brought us there. They didn't actually even tell us we were going there. So all of a sudden we were there and the guide was like, let's go see the Tudor kitchens. And I didn't know what a Tudor kitchen was. Like, it took me way out of left field, but whatever. It's an adventure. It's an actual adventure by Disney. So, and I'm pretty flexible. So whatever. So we go into this castle and it was, like I said, it was very hot. And it's this historical place. It's not an active castle. So, or palace. So like it is so hot. And there was a tour guide who was taking the group around. And at this point, my son was done. He's 8 years old. He's been to how many different places this morning? Yesterday was an exhausting day. He has not slept enough. He has had it. And he is not listening to the guides. Like they give you these Vox boxes with headsets to listen to the local guides. He like, they wasn't even in his ears. He was just done, right? And like the goal for like me and Greg at this point was like, let's see how we can get Theodore happy so that he doesn't like ruin it for other people, right? Like, or that he doesn't have a bad experience and not have fun. You spend so much money on these trips. So at some point, and my son is he's just great. Like earlier in the trip, he called a taxi on his own. He's real street smart. Okay. So my 8-year-old walks up to the guide because we're through the palace and we're in these gardens, right? These beautiful, huge gardens. And she's still talking. And he goes, "Can we just have a break?" And she goes, "Okay." And she gave them 10 minutes in these beautiful, huge, glorious gardens, which were taken out of like a picture book. And I kid you not, all of the kids just started running, full speed through these gardens. And all the parents just sat on the ground. And I looked around and I was just laughing to myself. Because at that moment, I knew, even though no one had said it, that we were all just done. Do you know what I mean?
And your son was the only one that was willing to speak up.
Which is very much a Theodore thing. Like, there's this meme going around that says, which of your children would be the most likely to start a rebellion and why is it your second child? Like, that is my son. Okay. So after that, they gave us, so after this little pause in the gardens, we ran back to the shuttle because it started raining, but they did give us like 20 minutes in the gift store, which they had been doing throughout this whole trip that I didn't mention. They'd been giving us 20, 30 minutes, like go look at the gift store, go look at stuff. And honestly, like maybe it's just our family, but I kind of would have rather had those 20 or 30 minutes seeing something else or doing something else, not looking at a gift store, but whatever. That's fine. People liked it. So went to the gift shop, got back on the shuttle. And this night we had dinner at the hotel. We didn't get back to the hotel until like 5:45. Dinner was supposed to start at 6 or 6:30. So they moved dinner to 6:45. And do you remember last time we chatted, there was supposed to be like a kids movie night where the adults get dinner by themselves and they canceled it? Right. This wound up actually being this night. Surprise! They did it. So that was kind of nice. And the best part of it was that the dinner was at the hotel. So we could just run up to our rooms. Everyone took showers because we were disgusting, right? Got dressed and went down to dinner. Now, the kids watched Ratatouille, the dinner service at the hotel. Like, so you had an option. Either you could go to the hotel dinner and it was on Disney, right? Or you could go elsewhere, but that wouldn't be on Disney. The thing though is, I don't know how anyone would have had time to go elsewhere because drop off for dinner was at 6:45, right? And you had to pick them up by 8:45. 2 hours is plenty of time, not in Europe. Like it takes like an hour just to get a first course. So it was late enough that at 8:45, I walked down and grabbed the kids and brought them back up to the restaurant because I didn't want the guides to have to keep them, and we wound up at the restaurant an extra half hour after that. So yeah. And that's just how service was in Europe overall. Like even like that pizza place we went to earlier in the trip, like if you're looking for quick food, like there is no quick service restaurants. Like you have to get like takeout or I don't even know, go to Pret or Starbucks. Like anytime you're sitting at a restaurant, even if you think it's going to be quick, like a hamburger joint, it's not.
They're not quite on the schedule that we're used to.
No, they're not. That night, the other thing we had to do, because like before dinner, because we weren't sure what time we were going to be back, is we had to pack our bags for the Euro train the next day, the
Mm-hmm.
Eurostar. The guy, I don't remember if it was 8 or 9 because I didn't write that part down, but we knew that we had to have our bags packed and ready before we went to dinner, right? And you just left your bags in your room and the bell people just came and got them. Now, the way we did it, which I would recommend, was we just kept a couple backpacks and had our clothes for the next day and our like major needed toiletries and everything else we put in the suitcases. And the way that it works is that they hire a driver to drive to the Kimpton in like this big bus, right? Or it's a van, actually. It's a big van. They call him a man with a van. They pack all of our suitcases in and then drive it to Paris. So you have to have your bags ready that night before because he literally drives overnight to Paris so that your bags are there when you get to the hotel the next day.
Okay. But logistically, it's a lot to figure out. Like, okay, what am I going to keep? What am I going to pack?
Absolutely, especially with like 4 humans, right?
Mm-hmm.
So that was a lot, but I was glad that the bags were done and we did it and it was great. So, and dinner was fun. It was nice. It was nice to have a little break from the kids. And FYI, if you do get alcohol that night, you get charged separately. Disney doesn't cover that. But it was nice and it was a nice gesture for them to have the kids watch the movie. I asked the kids how the movie was and they said it was terrible because they couldn't actually watch the movie because none of the kids would actually watch the movie. They were too busy running around.
They were antsy.
Yes. Which I mean is fair. They're in a room with like complete strangers. Like at this point, like the kids never really interacted with each other despite all this stuff until like the last day.
Wow.
Yeah, I think it was like the mix of the groups, right? But anyways, so next morning we had to meet at 8:30 to get on the Eurostar. The Eurostar ride was fine. They recommended to us to pick up food from Pret before the shuttle drive because the food on the train is terrible. That's their words, not mine. I would say that the food on the train isn't good. They do give you a meal, but we were kind of, I don't know if it was like the time difference or if because we had breakfast that morning, we were never really hungry. So none of us even finished our meals on the train and we wound up just throwing away the food that we bought.
Mm.
So your mileage may vary. Keep that in mind. I don't know if I would spend a ton of money on like takeaway sandwiches to bring on the train.
Mm-hmm.
After like immediately from the Eurostar, which, okay, going from London to Paris via train was a huge culture shock because the train station is very dirty and very, very smelly and very crowded and very uncomfortable. But that is temporary, right? And right after we got off the Euro train, we went to Montmartre, which was where we had on the agenda the funicular ride.
Yes, a fun word. That's my new favorite word. Funicular.
Funicular. So it was like, it's so Montmartre is, I guess, I mean, people are going to listen to this and be like, that's not right. But to the best of my knowledge, it is like a church on the top of a hill and like a little village outside of it. And it's a very, very steep hill. So you can climb the steps. I would say it's maybe 2 or 3 stories, very vertical. If you don't want to do that, you take the funicular. And the funicular is like a small cabin. You probably fit 25 or 30 people in. And it just takes you up the hill instead of walking up the steps. That's all that it is.
Mm-hmm.
So at the top, there was a church. It was rain at this point. The walk to Montmartre was absolute chaos and extremely stressful. It is like the streets of Paris. It is traffic. It is congested. It is chaos. Like it was tough. That was a tough day. But then after we left the church, we went into the city area outside of just like I would say maybe 3 blocks from the church. You just walk. I don't even know which direction because I can't think about, where we were on the map. But like 2 or 3 blocks away, you get into this village of like artists and crepe stands and gelato stands. And like it reminded me kind of like old Montreal, like just very cute, very what you think about like an old French village would be. And it was one of our favorite places. It was awesome. And this was one of the times where I'm like, "Ah, I wish we had known this was here because I would have skipped the church and walked right to this little village to spend some time, right?"
Mhm.
So on the square, they had artists doing portraits, and there was probably 15 different artists, and you could pick an artist and you would sit there and they would draw your portrait. Some of them would do them off pictures, some of them would do them live, right? And my daughter really wanted a portrait. So she sat and she stood for a portrait or sat for a portrait. We only had like 35 minutes in that little village area before our wine tasting. So the guide said, if you decide to get a portrait, text us and we'll let you know where we're going for the wine tasting. Okay. So that's what we did. We sat, we did the portrait. My son got ice cream. And it probably took about, it probably did take 30 minutes to do the portrait, but it took a couple minutes to find the artist, which artist she wanted to do the portrait. Right. So in the end, like the guides, the group was passing us going to wine tasting and we were still doing the portrait. And we hadn't seen any of the rest of the village, just the artist section. Okay. So this is where we started veering off the given itinerary. And I'm glad we did. So the activity here was wine tasting and then trivia for the kids. So, and I don't know how long it was. It must have been at least an hour and a half. But I was waiting for Addie to finish her portrait. The group went to go do wine tasting and trivia. And the restaurant where they were doing it was like just at the end of the square. So it was extremely close, like within a block. And so my husband took my son to the trivia, left him there, and then came back to meet me. And we kind of like hung out and waited for Addie's portrait to be done, right?
Mhm.
After her portrait was done, we went into the restaurant and we're looking around. And like Greg and I were like, we don't really want to do this. Like, I like wine, but he doesn't drink wine. It was really hot in there. It was stuffy. It was dark. And we didn't get to see any of Montmartre, right? So we were like, we don't want to do this. So we talked to one of the guides and I was like, what time are you leaving here? Would it be okay if we left the kids for trivia and just walked around for 15 minutes? And he's like, oh, we're going to be here for at least another 40 minutes. And I was like, okay, like if you're comfortable, we're comfortable. And he said, absolutely go. So me and Greg left the restaurant. We only walked around for like 15 minutes because I felt bad, right? But it was really nice. Like I saw a guy playing an accordion with like a cat on the top of the accordion. Like there were all these little like touristy shops and there was art and there was just, it was really fun. Those like 15 minutes that we had to walk around. And then we ran back to the wine tasting because we felt really, really guilty. We walked in the wine tasting and they immediately sat us next to the group, gave us a full cheese board for ourselves and all three wines that the group had tasted. Okay. We sat there for maybe 15, 20 minutes eating cheese and wine. And it was almost like a date because it was just me and Greg and like a separate table, right?
Mhm.
And we had the time of our lives. And it was fast. Like we were done eating and done with wine. And we still had to wait like another 15, 20 minutes before the group left.
So you managed to fit it all in.
Exactly. And I think that if we had not done the portrait and gone with the group and sat in wine tasting, I think I would have been annoyed. I think I would have been like, I didn't get to see any of the village. I didn't get to do what I wanted to do. So like there are these little moments where like we made decisions on the spot. And that was a decision that we both felt was like the best decision for us and what we wanted to do.
Mhm. Good.
And it
I'm
was
glad you did.
so, okay. So blah, blah, blah. Addie's portrait. I'm looking through my notes. We went back to the hotel and got ready for dinner. This was supposed to be the first night in Paris, Parisian, like an elegant Parisian meal. It was not. It was just okay. The restaurant was loud. You couldn't even hear each other. It was another disappointing meal. The waiter actually got mad at my son and like slammed the table with his fist, like in front of my son.
Mhm.
Yeah, it was wild. It was totally wild. But honestly, I didn't say anything. I was just like, let's get out of here. Right. It was not good. It was not good. And I didn't tell the guides or anything because I think it was just a culture thing. I think something was lost in translation. Right.
Mhm.
And we were all tired and wanting to get back to the hotel. So dinner was, I kind of even wonder if like for anyone who's planning to do this trip, like some of the food really is so not good. And the restaurants in Paris are fantastic. Like, I might consider skipping some of the Disney provided meals and instead making a reservation elsewhere that has a really good reputation, or doing something separate. Because, like, throughout this whole trip, like, we didn't get any good Parisian food.
Mm-hmm. But that, to me, if I was paying for the ABD, I would expect them to curate
Right?
the good.
Yeah. I mean, so this, in my opinion, what we pay for this ABD is deluxe accommodations, deluxe treatment, deluxe, transportation. Like, we're paying top dollar for this experience, right?
Mm-hmm.
The food leaves a lot to be desired. I have read on other forums, though, that this is a problem with this trip, and it does not necessarily happen in other countries.
Okay.
So, like, peace of mind, if you're a foodie and you're planning on going to London and Paris, more Paris than London, for food, it's something to keep in mind. You might want to do something different. But in other countries, I think it's a little bit of a safer bet.
I have a new goal of going on enough ABDs that I can compare them and tell you what the food quality is.
I support this strategy. Let me know when you're going. We'll go. Okay.
I'd love that. The next day, you guys are headed to the Eiffel Tower.
Yes, yes. So the great thing about FYI, so the hotel in London does not have takeout mugs, and they didn't let us drink coffee on the bus anyways. They actually made.
You said London. Do you mean Paris?
Yes, no, in London, but in
Okay.
Paris. So the difference in Paris, they do have takeout mugs at breakfast, so you can grab coffee to go, and you can take your coffee on the bus. So coffee lovers, get your coffee because you're going to need it. Okay. So lunch inside the Eiffel Tower. So we got on the bus, drove over to the Eiffel Tower. This was cool because as we're walking to the Eiffel Tower, they find a spot outside, like in a garden, close to the Arc de Triomphe, so that you can get a full family shot. Because when you're close, you can't get a shot, right? You're too close. The thing's massive. And my kids were like, I thought it was a lot bigger than it was. And in my brain, I'm like, just wait, right? So they took pictures first, then we walk through and we get to the Eiffel Tower. The security outside the Eiffel Tower and the check bag stuff is absolutely insane. And this point right here was the first time that I went, whew, this is why we booked ABD. Because ABD just went right to the front of the line. There was no waiting. They took care of us. They checked us in, and we went right up an elevator up to like the second floor of the Eiffel Tower.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know how they do that, but if you're going to Eiffel Tower, try to figure out how to make that work because it's worth it. The lunch at the Eiffel Tower, they sat the group in the middle of the restaurant, which makes no sense to me. Because if you're in a restaurant with a view, wouldn't you want to be near the windows, Shannon?
Mm-hmm.
So at this point, my son, who, as now you know, is an advocate for himself, he's like, let's make a kids table. And there were like my daughter and like 3 other kids were like, yes, kids table, kids table, kids table. So there was like 5 or 6 kids and they all made a table. And the guides were like, no, you can't do that. You have to sit with your families. And they were crushed. Because I tell you what, it's only been like grandma came for, the second part of this trip. But my family of 4 has been together for how many days now?
Mm-hmm.
Like, we appreciate the family together time, but you run out of stuff to talk about. Like, when you have all your meals together, when you're on your tour together, when you're on the shuttles together, when you're on the train together, when you're on the plane together, you're together 24/7 for, at this point, what is this, the 20th, for a week? That is a whole lot of together time, Shannon.
It is, especially when kids are used to going to school, parents are used to working. It's like we're used to having a little variety and mixing up our company.
Exactly. You want to talk to someone else. So they were so disappointed. And I wish that they hadn't done that. I wish they had let them do a kids table because us adults, we sure could have used different company too, to be totally honest.
And also, like you mentioned, the kids didn't really interact too much. So that's kind of been a fun option for them.
It's for them to start to get to know each other, right?
Mm-hmm.
But alas, didn't happen. Lunch was not great. Do you hear, a theme here? Food not good. But the Eiffel Tower is fantastic. And I loved the skip the security. We actually left lunch just like everybody was sitting and nobody had gotten up yet. And dessert had already come. And me and Greg are like, we should just leave. Like, what are people waiting for? And we're like, okay, we'll just go. So we left. We were like the first ones to leave the restaurant. And we walked because so there's parts of the Eiffel Tower where you walk upstairs, right? And so we walked up the stairs, and I don't know how many flights it is. Shannon, it is a lot of stairs. Like,
Mm.
like I'm a poo-sized woman. I'm a big girl. Okay.
Mhm.
I'm pretty active though. And I had to take several breaks. My heart rate was up. It was a workout, but it's totally worth it. It was fantastic. The views up there were amazing. And my kids were so happy. Like so happy just to be outside looking over Paris. Like it was very, very cool. We didn't have enough time. So you go up these stairs, the top floor you have to get to via elevator. We did not have enough time, even though we left the restaurant a little bit early, to go all the way to the top via elevator. So FYI, your mileage may vary. If that's important to you, skip dessert, get up there early. Okay.
Mhm.
So then we went all the way back down, had to meet the group, got in the shuttle, and on your way to the Eiffel Tower, there's some street vendors that sell like Eiffel Tower souvenirs. My son had seen one that lit up and he really wanted it. So as we were walking out, I bought him one of those, went to the shuttle, and the next thing we did was the chocolate workshop.
As a group.
As a group, they split the groups into two, and there was like little stations of like dark milk, white chocolate, and you got to make your chocolate. There's really not much else to talk about there. The kids had a blast. It was cute. I know a lot of people skip this activity, but we liked it. It was fine. It was a good break. It was doing something instead of just like listening to someone,
Mhm.
right? So my family really appreciated it. I thought it was clever. And at the end of the chocolate workshop, every family was gifted a coupon to bring home a bag of chocolate. So my kids really like that, right? And it was cute. And after that, it was back to the hotel. Our ABD day was over.
I have a question about you have mentioned buying different things or they gave you chocolates or whatever. How
Mhm.
did you plan ahead for, like, souvenirs and stuff?
So what I did, well, oh, I wish I had my budget open. What I did was I personally saved, I think it was like $150 or $200 per person. Now, it's not a lot of money, right? But it depends on your family and what kind of thing you want to get. Like I know some families went immediately to some of the high-end stores and bought purses. Those purses are thousands of dollars, right? What I did for the kids was I said, "Hey, you've got some money, decide carefully." But my kids are the kinds of kids that have to get something at every shop we go to. Like they can just look at things and be like, "Meh, I don't want anything."
Did you have extra luggage to accommodate the new stuff?
We brought for a family of 4, we checked 5 bags and used every single centimeter in those bags on the way home. So
Mhm.
on the way down, my son's suitcase was basically empty.
Mhm.
And then we also had 4 backpacks. So on the plane down, the backpacks had like books. My daughter had her iPad, that kind of stuff. Like they weren't too full. On the
Mhm.
way back, there was like we couldn't bring any more stuff. There was no more room for our stuff.
Mhm.
So I mean, it's so with the flight that we booked, we didn't have to pay extra for that 5th bag. So I mean, check your flights, check what you can do. But since we had direct flights, I was very comfortable checking bags, having the extra room, and just being prepared. And the other thing we did was we also got a laundry service, and I booked it actually this night. Perfect question. Because what we wind up doing is we wound up packing like maybe 5 outfits, I think, per person, and extra underwear and socks. And we bought these Tide sink packets. Have you seen those?
No.
So you can get them on Amazon. They come in 3 packs. They're just like little packets of like laundry detergent that are fine to bring in a carry-on,
Mhm.
right? And you can do sink laundry. So we did some socks, we did underwear, some of the kids' clothes. Like I couldn't wash my linen pants in there, right? but we could do some of the kid stuff. And that carried us over pretty well. We were gone for 2 weeks, right? And there's no way I could have fit 2 weeks of laundry in our bag. And I wasn't going to spend €9 to wash one shirt, right?
Mhm.
So planning on using the laundry service, which I can tell you about, and having brought 5 bags was plenty of room for well, I don't want to say plenty. It was just enough room for all of
Mhm.
our souvenirs.
You just couldn't buy anything too big.
Exactly. Exactly. And the artwork that we wound up bringing home 2 pieces of artwork. We held those in our hands and no one looked at us sideways.
Okay. I think we were last at the chocolate activity, and I believe you may have had dinner on your own that evening.
Yes, that night, remember I told you I was nervous about finding places to eat. That
Yes.
night, I got a recommendation from our guides. We went to a place called Sub Cafe, which was an Italian restaurant because my kids needed pasta at this point. And it was fine. It was affordable. It actually didn't take too long. It was €100 for a family of 4 with 2 drinks and an appetizer. Not bad. Like, would recommend if you're in the area, easy walking distance. After that, we went to Lafayette Galleries, which is like France's some of France's like huge department stores. They have 3 buildings, one for women's, one for men's, and a third that has like home goods and food. Okay.
Mhm.
In the women's building, if you go all the way up to the roof, they let you on the open air roof and you can see views of all of Paris.
From the department store.
And it's totally free. You just go up there. But that's the store closes at 8. The roof closes at 7:30. We didn't know it closed at 7:30. We got there at 7:15. So it was just enough time. And the great thing about that versus the views from the Eiffel Tower is like, pro tip, when you're on the Eiffel Tower, you don't see the Eiffel Tower in your
Mhm.
photos of Paris, right?
Listen, this is the same tip I get for New York City. Don't go up the Empire State Building. Go up some other building so you can see the Empire State Building.
Exactly, exactly. So it's a women's department store rooftop, closes at 7:30. Be there or be square. You're gonna love it. It's gorgeous.
Okay, nice. So that was end of that day, right?
No, it was good. It was good. Yeah, that was the end of that day.
And you were headed to the Louvre the next day.
Yes. So that night I talked to the laundry people via cell phone, like emails, and I scheduled to have our laundry picked up the next day. So that night was like putting laundry together. The next morning, before we got on the shuttle bus for the Louvre, we dropped off 2 very, very large shopping bags. Like, I got the shopping bags from the front desk. There were Louis Vuitton purse bags. So there were huge shopping bags full of all of our laundry. I literally put everything in there except for PJs and then our outfits for the next day. Okay.
Mhm.
Dropped that off, went to the Louvre. The tour, if anyone's been to the Louvre, the Louvre is over 20,000 artifacts. Okay. It was reported, I read somewhere that if you spent 5 minutes at every artifact at the Louvre, it would take you 3 months, 24/7 to see the Louvre. Okay.
Mhm.
So that's just facts. I have done the Louvre with my mom before last time we went to Paris. So this trip, it's interesting having been to Paris before and experienced these things and then doing it with the group. It's a totally different perspective. So the tour at the Louvre, we saw the Roman statue section and the Italian art to see the Mona Lisa, basically, section. Only those 2 sections. The Louvre is so much more than this. And I had noticed that another family left us as soon as the guided tour had begun. And if I ever did this tour again, which I don't think I would, this specific tour, I would leave the tour to go see other areas of the Louvre because it was it was very much stop at one painting, talk about a painting for 7 minutes. Next
Mm.
painting, talk about a painting for 7 minutes. Where we do like museums, but when we museum, we tend to walk around, find a thing, read the plaque, move on. So then you tend to see a lot more. I felt like if this was the only time people saw the Louvre, I don't think you could appreciate the vastness and the history that's in it based on the walking tour that we were given.
Hmm.
But it is what it is, right? Your mileage may vary. And we did see the Mona Lisa. My son was very excited about seeing the Mona Lisa. And he goes, it's smaller than I thought. And I was like, told you, right?
Mm.
And that was fine. They did give us, so funny. They give like the walking tour itself was like an hour and a half with the guides talking to you. We only saw these 2 sections, right? But we got 30 minutes in the gift store. Shannon, I'm telling you, like ABD loves to shop. So, but I will say that the gift shops at the Louvre were excellent. And we wound up getting a lot of things that the kids wanted and gifts for our friends back home at the Louvre.
Okay. So maybe that's why they allowed 30 minutes because they knew the
Probably.
shops were good.
Yeah, maybe. I don't know. I feel like they did it at all of them. So whatever.
Mm-hmm.
But good stuff there. Good mementos. Let's see. After that, my note here, Shannon says, wonder if we should have gone earlier or left the group? Question mark. Not sure. I'm not sure. I'm still not sure what I should have done. We got back on the shuttle and we drove over to an area close to Notre Dame. That was nice because we got to go. Obviously, Notre Dame is still closed, but we got to get photos in front of Notre Dame. And then we walked over. This was actually one of the better portions as far as history and sharing knowledge. Like the kids were more engaged with this because of Hunchback, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like connect those. And they did this demonstration with the kids of like how Notre Dame was built. Like there wasn't a lot of times where the tour guides engaged the kids. And this was one of the times where they did. And that was good. That was really good. After photos in front of Notre Dame, we went to the Latin Quarter. And in the Latin Quarter is a ton of food and shops. So kind of like Montmartre, but no real artists, more like stuff. We had an hour to visit the Latin Quarter. And in the Latin Quarter, there's a store called Shakespeare and Company, which I don't know a lot about literature, Shannon. I was a math major, but I guess it's like a famous store in Paris. And all the books in there are in English. Okay. And it seems like most of the workers were English too. And Addie is a huge bookworm. And like I told you earlier in the trip, she got really interested in Shakespeare. So she went into Shakespeare and Company and picked up a couple books, including like a Shakespeare for Kids book. And at Shakespeare and Company, they will stamp your book with their emblem. Because, yeah, so that's a nice memento too, right? A book with the emblem.
What a great souvenir for her.
Right? So that was awesome. It only took like 15 minutes. And then we went to this crepe restaurant because crepes are fast, right? That one of the guides had recommended. Now, crepes are fast. Restaurants are not fast. Now we know, Shannon. So we had crepes. The restaurant was lovely. The servers were lovely. I mean, food was fine, but like it took a really long time. And this was one of the times that I'd wish I just found a stand with something to go because there's so many shops. And I saw other families sitting at restaurants. And I hope that people listen to this. And if they think that they might appreciate more of the browsing and seeing different areas and hearing different languages. And there's something about just walking around these quarters, right? Maybe they'll skip a sit down lunch, but if you love, long sit down lunches, go for it. You've got plenty of options there.
Mm-hmm.
So by the time we finished lunch, we visited Shakespeare and Company. We went to lunch, got seated immediately. Okay. So we didn't have to wait, but still we only had like 10 minutes left in the Latin Quarter after that. And my mom wanted to go to a bakery across the street. So my mom took the kids to the bakery and me and Greg ran. Shannon, I do not run. I ran from the center of the Latin Quarter to the bridge because along the bridge in Paris, there's all different artists that have like real paintings. I mean, is it touristy? Yes, but it's adorable because there's paintings of the Eiffel Tower and I found a stand with old comic books. I found 2 old Mickey Mouse comic books in French that I had to buy, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like from like 1930. And like, just so me and Greg knew that we wanted to bring a piece of art home from Paris. So we had to do it. We ran and we found one. We found on canvas a painting of the Eiffel Tower that we'll get framed and put in my living room at some point, hopefully this summer. Right. And then we ran back to the garden. Like, so the group was leaving the garden center by the time we got back there. And we were there at like 1 minute late. And the way they do it is like they leave one guide behind for the people that aren't there yet, right? To show them the way back. But we met up with the group as they were walking. And I'm so glad that we did that, because if we hadn't done that, we never would have gotten a piece of art.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So were other people leaving the group like you guys were?
Like, I didn't notice it until the end. Like, I saw people leave at the Louvre, like, and I couldn't tell who, when, or where, but the group would be split up in two a lot, and there were 38 people on our tour. Okay. So at various points, like in Versailles, there was only 12 people in one of our groups, right?
Mm-hmm.
Or like there would be, like, instead of 18 or 20, there would be 15 people late. So the thing we did after this was the Paris Opera House. By that time, there were only like 10 people left in the group that went to the Paris Opera House. So I don't know where they went, but they did something. And I kind of wish I like had known what they did, because the Paris Opera House must have been 120 degrees. It was stuffy. The building is gorgeous when you walk in, but my kids were done by this point. And my mom stayed and finished the tour. I asked her how it was, and she said it was fine. She said, like, she didn't say that she regretted staying, but she said something like, I don't know if I really learned much. Okay. But the reason, like, me, Greg, and the kids left the Paris Opera House early was one of the guides, Corey, like, came over to me, and it was so hot, Shannon. It was so hot. Like, he came over and he's like, after this entrance, like, there's nothing else really to see here. Like, you guys can probably go if you want to. And I was like, thank God he said that. Like, he read the room, right? And I wonder if he had told other people that, which is why the group is so small by the time we got there, right?
Maybe so.
Yeah. So we went back to the hotel, took showers. We had to take showers in the middle of the day every time we got back a little early, because it was so, so hot. We were all sweating, walking. It's an active trip, right? And that night we went back to Lafayette, and we went to the food court section of Lafayette, because the food court section is like really cool. It's in this third building where there's every kind of food you could ever want in the history of humanity. And you could get it takeaway, which is their takeout, or you could get it sit down. And so my daughter got some sushi because she finally found some sushi, right? And then my son got like roasted chicken, and my mom got like a sandwich, and we got food from different places and eat together. And it's not a cafeteria. It's like nicer than a cafeteria, but it's that type of setting. And then that's it. Then we went to bed. The store closed at 8, so we were out of there by then.
All right. Another long day.
Right? I'm tired just talking about it. It's such a long day. We're almost there.
You headed to Versailles the next day.
Versailles, which is like one of my favorite places on the planet. It rained all morning. It was miserable. Luckily, Versailles is indoors, but to get there, you have to go through the rain. The tour was okay. The guide that we had that day, because there were 2 different local guides, and one of them kind of jived better with my kids than the other. The guide we had that day, I think, picked up that the kids were getting a little anxious. So he started doing little things like, hey, did you notice that secret door back there? Like, there was a real secret door so that royalty could, escape should there be, dangerous things happening. But it was, it was a little tough. There's 3 different castles at Versailles. We saw the big one. Like I said, it was raining. We went out to the gardens. And I think like there must be some director from Disney that you have to see the gardens, because we walked out to the gardens, but it was raining, Shannon, like raining. And like the ABD guides, they are fantastic, but they don't bring you extra umbrellas or anything. So whatever you brought, your umbrellas or your raincoat is what you had. And we're all standing out in the middle of the garden, just standing there, tired and exhausted. And we're just standing, I guess, like taking pictures and waiting like maybe 20 minutes for a tram to get to us to go to lunch. And I don't really know why they did it that way. Like, I don't know if it was because the tram was late, or I don't know. I can't speculate, but like it would have made a lot more sense to try to not go out into the gardens in the middle of the rain, because after lunch, the sun came out and it was gorgeous. And no one saw the gardens except for my family, because once again, the Eklunds decided to leave a little bit early.
Hmm.
So, like, sounds like I'm such a rebel. I promise it wasn't just me. After the gardens, torrential rain, like I said, we went to this lunch. And I had read on a forum from other ABDers that this lunch is terrible. Somebody else had said this, not my words. And instead of getting the sit down lunch, ask them to give you your food to go, which you can do, and go have a picnic in the gardens, which
Hmm.
that sounded like amazing to my family. But it was raining, so we couldn't do that, right? So we had the sit down meal. It took 1 hour. We were waiting for dessert. So 60 minutes, my family of five, like I said, we kind of sick of each other at this point, waiting for our dessert. And I said, and the sun had come out. And I was like, I think we should leave. And I talked to the kids and I was like, listen, do you really need dessert? And they were like, yes. And I was like, but look outside. Don't you want to explore? And they're like, oh, okay. And they were on board. So we left earlier than the group. After this was supposed to be a bike ride, which I wouldn't do anyways, right? The kids might have done it, but I'm not too sure. But next to the bikes, there's golf carts. So we went over to the golf cart slash bike stand and got a golf cart and spent the next hour and 15 just like roaming the gardens in the golf cart. And we had so much fun.
On your own.
On our own. But really, like I said, like we didn't really talk to the other people in the tour, and the kids didn't play with each other on the tour anyways. So it's like we were on our own the whole time regardless, right? Like, I don't know. So, but anyways, so we asked the guides what time we should be back, and we were back on time. We were one of the first ones back. And other families did do the golf carts, but they ran out of golf carts. So good thing we got ours. And the families that did the bike ride, because it had rained the day before, the kids were like covered in mud. Like there was a poor little girl, there was a 6-year-old on the trip that like she was covered like head to toe in mud. They had to bring her to the bathroom to try to clean her up. I felt so bad for her. And I don't know. I think that was a good decision. I think it's good that we left, Shannon.
Yeah, it sounds like it was definitely right for your family. Was 6 the youngest age, or were there any younger than that?
6 was the youngest, and she was like, it was mostly, there was like 4 8-year-olds, 3, 1, 2, no, 3 8-year-olds, couple 10-year-olds. My daughter's 10. There was only like 2 teens, not a lot of teens, and the 6-year-old was like significantly the youngest. Like she was definitely the outlier.
Mm-hmm. It just sounds like a lot for her.
I don't know how she did it. She was fantastic. All the kids on the trip were fantastic. It was long days. It was a lot of walking through really hot, stuffy places, and the
Mhm.
kids did well. They really did.
Good. The next day was your last day of the ABD.
Yes. So actually, no, this is the last day. So you go home on the Friday. Okay. So Thursday night was the farewell dinner. After Versailles, everyone went
Oh,
home,
okay.
took showers, right? And they took us to this restaurant that's like super famous. I don't remember the name of it. And this is when they had your end of tour video where they compile photos, and there was a couple speeches, and they gave out like cards. I don't know if there were gifts because we didn't have a celebration for like all the celebrations. It was really funny. There was 38 people on the trip, right? And it was actually only 4 families, because one party was like several generations and cousins. So it was a very large party. And like, it was these, like the guys were like, oh, this trip is special because we're celebrating certain people. But like every family except ours, like it was yada yada's birthday last month. Yada yada graduated from college. Yada yada is going to be graduating. Yada yada is going to middle school. Like it was just really funny because there was like 12 envelopes being handed out for all these quote unquote really special celebrations. But it made it really anticlimactic, right? Because everybody was celebrating something.
It's hilarious.
It was funny. It was kind of like, how it's everybody's birthday at Disney. Like,
Yeah.
yeah.
I was gonna say, I guess everything's a celebration if you want it to be.
Right? Like Addie lost a tooth, right?
Right.
Yeah. So it made me laugh, but maybe whatever. So it was fun. I mean, they had an accordion player. The dinner was nice. Again, the food was not very good, but the guides were good. People seemed grateful. I do think that it wasn't just us that felt a little on the tour, because I've read, and maybe you've experienced this on your, like, you've done California trips, right?
Mhm.
Like, I've read, like, people are crying and they get people's numbers and they stay in touch and everybody's so sad for the trip to be over. That wasn't the vibe in the room. It was gratitude, yes, because our guests were good. Gratitude because, yes, it was a great trip. It was fun, but no one was in tears that this was ending. No one was,
Hmm.
touched or, like, I don't know. And the kids kind of said bye to each other. Theo exchanged contact information with one boy, but I don't think we're going to hear from him. Like, I couldn't even tell you the adults' names except for one couple.
That is so bizarre.
Right?
And we did cry when our ABD ended. We cried throughout the ABD because there were so many
Oh.
touching moments. I'm still connected to our guides.
Yeah. I think it's luck of the draw because I'm a really sentimental person. It doesn't take much,
Mm-hmm.
And it just wasn't. It just wasn't what happened. Isn't that funny how that works?
It is very random.
But we had a wonderful time. We really did have a wonderful time. And the farewell dinner was very special and the video was cute. But we were so ready to go to Disneyland Paris, Shannon.
Well, good thing, because the next day your mom was leaving, but you guys are going to Disneyland Paris.
Yes. And we booked our travel through ABD. So we had a private car to Disneyland Paris. And so, like I told you, the Paris hotel was not good. Not happy with the Paris hotel. Did I tell you that my bed was broken? Like,
No.
it was terrible. It was terrible. And the rooms, like we had 2 rooms. My kids' room was double the size of our room. Like, I'm thinking about sending an email to ABD because in no way, shape, or form is that deluxe accommodations. And they're making, like, they charge you the same price no matter what room you get, right?
Mhm.
So, like, I'm not expecting a refund, but, like, if I'm paying for a room, I should get that category room.
Mhm.
So that was very frustrating. Did not like the Paris Hilton,
But
but
is that literally what it's called, the Paris Hilton?
yeah, I think it's Paris Hilton Opera. I wrote it down.
Okay. I
I think it's
the
Hilton Paris Opera.
okay.
Hilton
I was
Paris
gonna say,
Opera.
that's the name of a celebrity.
Oh, right. I didn't even make that connection. But so we went to, so that morning, private driver, said goodbye to our guides. Oh, a tip. We gave our guides their tip that morning when we were leaving for Disneyland Paris, because since that was the last time that we saw them, I just thought that made the most sense. Most people gave it to them at their farewell dinner.
Mhm.
So that was a little awkward, but we weren't going to, like, run back up to the room, find the tips, bring it. You know what I mean? Like,
Mhm.
that didn't really make sense. So we did it the way we did it anyways. But FYI, I didn't know most people do it at the farewell dinner.
How did you tell your kids that you were leaving the ABD tour and going to Disneyland Paris?
That's right. I didn't tell you. Okay. So delays at the airport. So we're talking days ago. This was a week ago, Shannon. My kids are miserable. They're at the airport, so sad, so frustrated, even hungry, right? And Addie was so upset that we were going to miss this bus tour. So I was like, well, Addie, you never got to listen since our pre-trip was posted on Patreon. I was like, well, do you want to hear the pre-trip? She's like, yeah, let me hear the pre-trip. So that's how I told her that we were going to Paris.
Oh.
I let her listen to the pre-trip. And what I did was I started a couple minutes after the interview started. So she didn't really hear about Paris till 20 minutes into the interview. And I got a video of her when she heard, like, and then we're going to Disneyland Paris. And
Mhm.
her face, like, lit up. And she, like, was like, what? And she, like, took the AirPod out of her ear and she turned to my son and she's like, Theodore, we're going to Disneyland Paris. And Theo was like, what? Huh? Is that true? And we're like, yeah. And he's like, oh, okay. And he looked down and kept reading his book.
Nice.
Granted, it was like 11:30 at night, right? Well, I don't know what time it was. Maybe it was earlier. But like, it totally surprised my daughter. And then on the podcast, I talked about how we were going to eat at Remy's. Like, she was so happy. Like, so that's how I told them. So really, Addie told her brother, and Addie found out with you. She found out when you found out.
All right. Well, hi, Addie. Hopefully you're listening to this part too.
She will. She will. So next morning, off to Disneyland Paris, Art of Marvel Hotel, New York. Amazing. Best hotel we stayed at, for sure. In our top 3 Disney hotels, I would say it rivals like a Riviera, except the theming is all superheroes. So if you love superheroes, do not hesitate. Just do it. The rooms at this hotel were like 3 of the rooms put together at the Hilton. Like, it was so like, it was almost like, oh, I'm home. That's what it felt like. You know, and it's not Florida, it's not California, but you're in Disney, right? So it feels like home. And like, okay, so when we got there, the rooms weren't ready yet, but they gave us our keys, like, which are your passes for the parks, right? And hold on, I need to switch my notes now because my Disneyland Paris trip is on a separate set of notes.
While you're looking for your notes, the analogy I've heard about visiting different Disney theme parks is that you feel home, but someone rearranged the furniture.
Yeah, that is exactly it. That is exactly it. And in this case, a lot more accents, right? But okay, so we get to the hotel, we got our keys, we took a bunch of photos in the main lobby. It is stunning. It is absolutely stunning. And I don't know when the refurb happened. I know it happened recently. You couldn't ask for anything better, truly. So there's 2 parks. There's Walt Disney Studios and Disneyland Paris, right? So we decided, because there's less things we needed to do in studios, to head over to studios right away. We walked into the parks at about 11:30. We went through the gates and got the kids crepes. They had, okay, in Walt Disney World, my kids have Mickey bars every single day, multiple times a day. That's just what they do. It's fine, right? In Paris, it was so hard to find Mickey bars. And Addie told me that the Mickey bars taste different than in Florida. So instead of Mickey bars, our go-to was crepes. Lots of sugar crepes.
When in Paris.
When in Paris, right? So we got crepes, got waters, and got in line. So our goal for Walt Disney Studios was to do some of the rides that aren't in the US parks, right? And I've heard great things about the shows. So got crepes, got in line for a 12 o'clock Frozen show. And it was like, no, it was 12. Yeah, 12 o'clock Frozen show. And it was like 11:45. And I thought I'd be fine. I was not fine. At 11:45, the queue for noon was already closed. And there was a huge line for the 12:45 show. Okay. And that happened, that we learned that lesson right away, which is a lesson that carried us through the rest of the days. And I would strongly recommend, because the shows, you cannot miss the shows. They're so good. Get there an hour before. And you know what? It's not humid. It's hot, but it's not humid like it is in Florida. So you get your snack, you bring a book. We literally brought books into the parks for the kids. You sit on the floor and you have your snack and you read a book and you chill because they're in Disneyland Paris and you wait for the show. It's not a big deal, right? So we got in line, we sat down, and we were tired from the craziness, honestly, the week before. The Frozen show was very cute. If you don't love Frozen, don't see it. It was cute. They have this big Sven animatronic that is fascinating, right? The thing about these shows that is so significantly different, and please correct me if I'm wrong, but all the singers and actors are actually singing. They're not dubbed. And I really thought that, for example, in the Frozen show in Hollywood Studios, like she's not really singing. It's dubbed, isn't it?
It's a lip sync.
Yeah. So
I used to have a list of places at Disney World where you could hear live singing, but it's just a few spots.
Yeah, I don't even remember the last time I heard live singing at Walt Disney World.
The Lion King, Finding Nemo.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, you're right. Sorry. Anyways, so yeah, so all live singing there, and it was very cute. Then we got more crepes. I have a list. We got more crepes. I talked Theodore into riding Tower of Terror with me. And when I say I talked Theodore into riding Tower of Terror with me, I mean, for months ahead of time, I've been saying, please someone ride Tower of Terror, please. And they all said no, 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 no. But then we're at studios. The boy has 2 crepes in him. He's had one of the best weeks of his life, his words, right? I was like, I really wish we could ride Tower of Terror. It's only a 15-minute wait. And he goes, I'll ride it.
Good.
So that's what we did. We rode Tower of Terror. It is not as intense as in Florida. It is much less intense. Since we were on Tower of Terror, Addie and Greg went over to Flight Force, which is rocket and roller coaster reimagined with like Avengers theming. Okay.
Nice. That's fun.
Yes, super fun. They told me that they thought it was the exact same track. I did not Google it, but I think it might be the exact same track. But you see there's like an Iron Man animatronic that's really cool. Captain Marvel's there. My daughter loves Captain Marvel. It was a good ride. Recommend doing it. After we got off Tower of Terror, we met them at Flight Force and did Flight Force again as a family because the wait was really short. It was like 15 minutes. And I noticed that Flight Force was between like 10, 15, 20 minutes, pretty much the entire time we were in the parks. So that doesn't ever get really, really high, FYI.
Mhm.
When you get into the Studios park, you can log in for a virtual queue to do the Heroes, what do they call it? Hero Training Academy, which is so Studios Park has an Adventures campus that looks very similar to the California park. Just like you said, the furniture is rearranged a little bit, right?
Mhm.
And so they have web slingers, they have Flight Force, they have shows that go on there. Like they have a Guardians in the Galaxy dance off, which we passed. There's like oh my gosh, what are those warriors called? The Wakanda warriors. I can't remember.
Not an Avengers person, so I do not know the references.
Well, there's these like Okoye, these fighters, they come out and they do something. There's like a Black Widow fighting thing. I don't remember the villain that she fights with Spider-Man. There's a lot of shows that go on randomly during the day. I would say even more than what we experienced in California. And over in this land, they have the Avengers Training Center, which you have to sign up for via virtual queue. You can sign up for Iron Man, Captain Marvel, or a random Avenger. Okay.
Mhm.
When we got into the virtual queue, when we got into the park, the virtual queue was already closed, but then it opened up again at 1, or was it 2? I don't remember. 1 or 2. I would Google it if you're going. When I logged in for when the queue opened up again, I immediately got a spot for a quote unquote random Avenger because the other 2 weren't open. And the spot was in 30 minutes. So it was perfect. It wasn't like we were waiting all day long for this virtual queue, right? So you go into the Hero Training Center and so we wound up getting Captain Marvel, even though it said Random Avenger, which is who my daughter wanted. So it was perfect. And she talked to them and she's like, who's your favorite Avenger? My son had found, so some of the merch I think was a little different. If you're a fan of Guardians of the Galaxy 3, they had a baby rocket stuffy in the store over by Web Slingers, which my son had to have. We're big Guardians fans. So he brought Rocket with him to meet Captain Marvel, and Captain Marvel was like talking to Rocket and talking to my kids about Guardians. And it was a very, very, very good interaction. We got photos. The photos came out amazing. And it was fun. It was fun. It was just like a little awkward because my kids are old enough that they know it's not, it's not real, right? But it's fun anyways. And Captain Marvel was good at keeping the conversation going.
Mhm.
What did we do after that? We met Captain Marvel. And then we got in line. No. Then we went to Pim Kitchen. Pim Kitchen was our dining reservation that we had for that evening. And we got it because we're big Marvel fans. I read that it's not that good. And I would agree that it's not that good. But you know what? It's fine. It's in the park. It's a buffet. I would say it's equivalent to many of the character meet and greets that are in the parks. this is not a character meet and greet, but it's that kind of food, right? When you go to these character buffets, you don't expect the best food. It's the same thing here. You're there for the ambiance and the giant hamburgers and the test tube sodas and that kind of stuff. I probably wouldn't do it again, but it was convenient and we were there and it was fine. After that, we went to Web Slingers, which I tried so hard to talk my kids out of doing
Why?
because the wait was between like an hour and 2 hours all day.
Oh, no.
Yeah. And when we went in line, it said the wait was 50 minutes. And the kids were like, look, Mom, it's only 50 minutes. And I'm like, yeah, but it's 50 minutes. And the difference, so when we were waiting for the shows, the queues are outside and we had snacks with us. Like waiting, standing in line indoors in these queues just feels harder in the body, you know? So it was a 15-minute wait and we did it. And I was like, are you sure you want to do this? We're probably going to go to California next year. It's the exact same ride. And they were like, no, we want to do it. So we did it. And my daughter said, wow, that was not worth the wait. We should have skipped it. And my son loved it. So there you go. Right?
Never know.
You
Have you
never
done the one
know.
in California before?
Me and my husband have. My kids have never done it.
Okay, so they didn't know.
Yeah, they had no idea. But I told them it's like Buzz Lightyear, but not, oh, I won, by the way. And my husband always schools me on Toy Story Mania and Buzz Lightyear. And my score was double his on Web Slinger. So,
Nice.
it's right.
Worth it then.
Yes. You know what? That was worth the 50 minutes because now I have bragging rights.
That's right.
Went to bed and we were exhausted.
Wait, did you see the drone show this night?
We did not. We
Okay.
did not because I thought we had. So, good question. So this is Friday, right? We have Saturday and Sunday. We have 2 more shots. So we're just going to go to bed because we wanted to get early entry for the next morning. And the drone show doesn't start till 10:55.
Oh, that's very late.
That is very late. And the reason, it makes sense. The reason is that it was late until like 10:30 at night in Paris. Like it was weird. It was really weird. It's very long days. And I think the longest day of the year was just a couple of days before we got there, which I'm sure didn't help either, but very long, bright, not humid, but hot days.
It's the longest day for all of us in the Northern Hemisphere, but
I think so, right?
That's like really late compared to what we're used to.
Exactly. Very, very, very late. So back at the hotel, I had the best night of sleep that all of us had. Like until that point, the hotels were so nice. Art of Marble was so nice, Shannon. Like you need to stay there. It's awesome. So day 2, breakfast was included in our reservation. We had buffet breakfast every single day on our trip. And we were so sick of buffet breakfast. I wonder if we should have tried to do something else along the way. But when it's included, you've already paid for it. It's kind of hard not to do it, right? Buffet breakfast. So in Disney World, it's Disney Springs. In California, it's Downtown Disney. In Paris, it's Disney Village. And the parks are situated similar to California, where they're sort of across from each other. And to get to the parks, you walk through Disney Village. Okay. So we walk through Disney Village and there's loud Disney music playing. And this day we wanted early entry Disneyland Park. The park, even like the area before you walk through the turnstiles is stunning. It is out of a storybook. And the music that they have all these fountains and pink flowers. And there's like a castle. There's not a castle, like a big hotel. I don't know if it's actually Disneyland Hotel, but there's like this hotel thing before you get through the turnstiles. And it's pink and it matches all the flowers and the fountains, and like Sleeping Beauty music was playing. And it felt like you jumped into a picture book. Like absolutely stunning.
Nice.
And it was really, it like took my breath away, big parks fan, right? And people were friendly. Like we got to early entry somewhere around 15 minutes before it was scheduled to start. And we were fine. We walked right in. There was a lot of people, but just like at the parks at home, once you get through the turnstiles, people run to different areas. So it all spreads out, right?
And is it like Disneyland in California in that there aren't that many on-site hotels, so the early entry isn't nearly as busy as like Disney World would be?
I would say so. I don't know how many on-site there are several on-site hotels, like, I can think of, like, maybe 5 off the top of my head. So
Mhm,
they do exist, but I think because the days are so long and the night's so late, I don't think a
mhm,
lot of people just get up early to go. It
mhm,
feels like California where it's more of a locals park. So if you're
mhm.
a local, you might not necessarily wanna be there at 9 o'clock in the morning, right?
And they may not be staying on-site.
Mhm. True. Very true. So the first thing we did when we walked in, other than ooh and ah, it's weird because like it's Main Street. You walk through the turnstiles, you walk through the little overhead thing where the train station is, just like home. And you look behind you and there's Mickey Mouse and Minnie Mouse and Donald waving, right? Just like back at home. And you go down Main Street and you see Sleeping Beauty Castle. And Sleeping Beauty Castle is stunning. If you're a castle lover, you're gonna love it. You're gonna absolutely love it.
Mhm.
And like Main Street Bakery is where it's supposed to be, and Casey's is where it's supposed to be, and the ice cream parlor is where it's supposed to be. It's just so funny, right? So the first thing we wanted to do was, and the first thing we did was Phantom Manor, which is Paris's version of the Haunted Mansion.
Mhm.
And we all liked it. We liked it. After we rode, we read the story behind it, and there's an entire like biography built around this ride that is so interesting. If you're going to Phantom Manor, you have to read the story behind Phantom Manor because we rode it a second time on the trip and now it's like our favorite ride.
Okay, good to
Like
know.
Haunted Mansion fans, like you're gonna love it. There was Phantom Manor was walk on. We went to Thunder Mountain. Thunder Mountain lived up to the hype. It is the best Thunder Mountain. The train takes you like so Thunder Mountain is on an island in the middle of Frontierland and you go under the water like in a tunnel and pop up on the island.
Mhm.
It's very cool. Thunder Mountain is amazing. Then we walked over to Indiana Jones, which for the first time in my son's life in several years, he was not tall enough to ride.
Interesting. It's a different
Right.
requirement.
Right, and it's an outdoor coaster. It's like a 40-second coaster with a loop. Skip it. If you're going, just skip it. Don't waste your time. Addie rode it twice, once with me, once with her dad, just so that we could say we did it. But you really don't have to. Don't even bother walking back there. We took the train to the front of the park. There's 4 stops, the front, Frontierland, Fantasyland, and their Tomorrowland, which is, I think, called Discoveryland. Don't quote me on that. But 2 of the stops were closed. The only ones that were open were Adventureland and the front of the park.
Mhm.
So we took the FYI, check that when you're going. So we took the train around to the front of park just because we wanted to, right? And we immediately went to, I think it's Discoveryland to ride Hyperspace Mountain. Hyperspace Mountain is their version of Space Mountain, but it has loops and it's themed Star Wars.
Mhm.
And it was fun. I mean, it knocks your head around a little bit. It wound up being a top 3 ride for the kids for sure. For me, I mean, for me, it was fun to do it once. I didn't need to do it again, right?
Mhm.
And then we left the park because it was lunchtime. It was already noon, and we grabbed sandwiches from one of the random places in Disney Village. Now, in the parks, and you had mentioned this to me before too, there's not a ton of like quick service places. There's more like kiosks of like ice cream or crepes. So we decided to instead to go to Disney Village, which has more quick service restaurants and just like quick pickup options. So we grabbed sandwiches there and then headed back to Marvel Hotel because we had a reservation at 1 o'clock for their Marvel meetup. When you're staying at Marvel Hotel, you can do this exclusive meetup with a Marvel character, and you never know who's going to be there. You have to sign up for it a week before your trip, is when the sign up opens. And I didn't really know about it till like the day before we got there. So I was a little late to the party, but I got a spot fine. And there's also like a photo set up for like cute photos. Like there's a photo that looks like you're crawling on the ceiling like Spider-Man. There's one where you have Thor's hammer. There's like a whole bunch of different ones. We did that and we met Dr. Strange. She was brilliant. We got amazing photos from the photographer there. And we immediately went to our room and passed out for several hours
Wow, just right in the afternoon.
right in the afternoon. And we try to do this in the parks in Florida too. We try to take a nap in the middle of the day, but inevitably my husband always falls asleep. I don't. And my kids sit there and wait for us to get up, right?
Mm-hmm.
Everyone slept.
Yes, you had a lot of trip before this.
Exactly. And it was so comfortable. The beds were so comfortable. After naps, we had dinner at Agrabah restaurant, which is back in Disneyland, which was very good. It was Mediterranean, lots of vegetarian options, very unique food. I would recommend it. I would do it again. And the other thing, as we were going to Agrabah, I took note of it. There's a lot of shaded areas in the Parisian parks, unlike Animal Kingdom or Epcot, where it feels like you really have to go into a store to find shade. They have all these like little caves and like nooks and crannies around the park where you could just find a shaded area and you would see people on a random patch of grass, just like picnicking in the middle of the park under shade. And it was really, really nice. And I wish that they would start implementing some of those structural things into our parks because, like I said, those days were really hot. This day in particular, or Saturday, I think it went up to 80 degrees. And it was 80 degrees it was 85, I think, by noon. And that's hot, like to be out in the sun. So having the shade and having some respite was really nice.
Mm-hmm.
We're on my Agrabah. After that, we went to explore the castle. You can go inside Auror's castle, and there's stained glass windows, and like you go upstairs, and there's a balcony, and you can see all of Fantasyland. After that, we went down. We did the Snow White dark ride. We did the Pinocchio dark ride, and we did Alice's Labyrinth, which is a real hedge maze. It is not a short maze.
How
Adults
difficult.
it is pretty hard. I didn't get lost, but we did have to turn around several times. And there's like little pop-ups around the maze, and the hedges are so tall that it's like shaded, right?
Mm-hmm.
And it was just fun. It was just fun. And my kids like were so interested in it that they didn't like run through it. I saw some what I think were locals, like little ones, like 4 or 5, just like running through the maze full speed, clearly knew where they were going, right? And like we really enjoyed it, like seeing all the little Alice in Wonderland touches, like the card soldiers would pop out and spook you, and there would be random water spraying out everywhere. At the end of the maze, you get to the Queen of Hearts castle, and you can climb up to the top and have the most incredible view of Fantasyland and the castle. And I have photos I'll have to send you because it was just lovely.
Nice. Is there anything else on this day?
We did Small World. We had some snacks. The big thing that we did that we didn't do was I had gotten a tip from one of the cast members there to try to be in the center area in front of the castle a half an hour before the drone show. So we were trying to get there for like 10:15. Okay. It was at 9:50 and we were taking a break over in like their Discovery/Tomorrowland area. And Hyperspace Mountain was down, and we were kind of sitting there waiting to see if it would come back up and the kids would run on, right? And it didn't wind up coming up, but my daughter was like, well, what if we went and rode Star Tours? It's only a 15-minute wait. And I was like, I don't know. I kind of feel like we should go over and get our fireworks seats. And she was like, come on, Mom, it's only 15 minutes. I was like, okay, go. I don't want to go. You go. So Greg and the kids went over to ride Star Tours. Shannon, like, second they left where I was, like a parade of people started passing where I was sitting, going to the castle. Okay. And it was nonstop. It never stopped. The posted wait time for Star Tours was 15 minutes. It wound up taking them 40 minutes. Mm-hmm. And we're at Disneyland. What does one do at Disneyland? You go see the drone show, right? We wound up like speed walking over there. I'm not even sure what time it was, right? And by the time we got there, it was just a sea of people. And we got a spot where we could stand. Like if you're looking at the castle, it was like to the right in front of where like the ice cream parlor would be. But the drones are all on the right side of the castle. And there were bushes in the way, so you could only see like the very top of the castle and like no drones. And like 5 minutes into it, I was like, I give up, we're done. We were just tired. We couldn't see anything. And unlike in Florida, where you know how they keep pathways open for people to cross through and go around, like there was none of that. It was just it was a wall of humans. So we just said, forget it. We're going to do this tomorrow. We're going to get here early. It'll be great, right? So on Main Street, there's the Main Street Center Street, and then on either side of Main Street, they have these things called arcades, which are covered walkways, similar to like the bypass, right, that they open during fireworks, except they're covered. So you could just walk through the arcade and not have to deal with any of the crowds. And it is really nice. And they need to bring that to Florida because it is a lifesaver. We used it many times during our trip. So no drones.
That is a bummer.
I was bummed. I was very bummed. We're almost there. Day 3. Are you ready for day 3?
This is the last day.
Yes. Longest trip on the history of planet, right? Day 3, we rope dropped Crush's Coaster, which is a ride over in Walt Disney Studios. Now, Crush's Coaster, okay, so I'm a big girl. I can fit on all the rides in Disney World, okay? I did not fit on Crush's Coaster. Now, I have had this problem at Universal, and at Universal, they're like, meh, too bad, so sad. See ya, right? At Crush's Coaster, they were so nice, Shannon. They were so nice. Like, so we road dropped it. My kids were literally the first people in the park because we happened to get the first queue that opened, right? So we ran over and it was like walk on, right? Like when they took me off the ride. And so just so people, if there's other big women or men that want to go, it clicks down similar to other click rides. I think I got 3 clicks and you need like 4, or maybe I got 4 clicks and you need 5. I needed 1 more. Okay. So I left there, got out of there. And the gentleman that was there was like, oh, mademoiselle, you're still beautiful. It doesn't matter. And he gave me a fast pass for our family to ride Tower of Terror.
How kind.
Very kind, very, very gracious to the way. It wasn't like, man, you know, like they were very, very, very kind. And that was perfect because we actually did, like my whole family did wind up riding Tower of Terror later, and we wouldn't have done it without the fast pass.
Oh, good.
So we did Crush's Coaster. We went over to their Toy Story Land, and there's a parachute drop ride, which is like an up and down ride, which the kid loved. I mean, it's a little kid ride, but they loved it. RC Racer, which is like, you'll have to Google it. It's like a curve with a car that you go. You're like a Hot Wheel, right? That was fun. We rode Ratatouille because it was walk on, Shannon. Ratatouille was walk on.
Like, isn't that wild? It's been there
was
for a while, so it's not new to them.
crazy. It was crazy because we were like, well, we should skip it. Like it's the same ride. I actually did find 2 things that I think are different. So I need to go find YouTube videos to see if that's right. But I thought I spotted 2 things. So we did Ratatouille, and then my family did Tower of Terror, my whole family. And the only reason, like my husband and my daughter did not want to ride, but my son talked them into it because my son is my son.
He listen, he's gonna do big things.
He really will.
Channel that energy into a good space.
Exactly. And if we had to wait, and the waits weren't too long for Tower of Terror in general, they were around 15, 20 minutes. If we had to wait, my daughter would have chickened out. She just would have. Like she wouldn't, like the suspense is the hardest part on Tower of Terror, right? So it was walk on. We went on, did that. And then we head over to Disneyland Park for the Lion King show. We did get there 1 hour, just like we did, like I told you, we thought we should do earlier in the week. And the Lion King, I'm so glad we did because the line was outrageous. Okay, the Parisians, they love the Lion King and they love Stitch. Like it's a big deal for them. It's really funny culturally, actually, to see how they react over these things. But we made it for the 12:15 Lion King show, which is nothing like the Animal Kingdom show. It is like an opera. It is back-to-back singing of the songs in English. And it's like a but there's also like Cirque du Soleil elements with like acrobatics. It was really good. The shows there, I believe, surpass the shows that I have seen in Florida.
Nice. That's good. High praise.
High praise. I don't know if I told you that we saw. No, I forgot to mention in my lineup for Friday, we did see Mickey and the Magician. For people that are going to Disneyland Paris, you have to see Mickey and the Magician. If you don't love Frozen, skip the Frozen show. Mickey and the Magician was outstanding. Like, spoiler for 10 seconds. They actually bring in like the Lion King Broadway puppets at one point. So there's actors with like a big rhino thing and the giraffes and the birds, just like the Broadway show, right? So good. So good. I actually wish I could have done the Mickey and the Magician show a second time, but we didn't have time. Okay, so back to Sunday, we saw the Lion King show, which was excellent and nothing like the Broadway show and nothing like the Animal Kingdom show. Very different show. We grabbed Phantom Manor. That was our second Phantom Manor ride. And after that ride, my kids were abuzz with the story and the differences. And like all we could talk about was Phantom Manor and how incredible Phantom Manor was. We ran back to the hotel, grabbed Earl of Sandwich on the way over, which I'd never actually had before because when I'm at Disney Springs, I get other stuff. But we had Earl of Sandwich, took naps, everyone slept, and we're back in the park again at Walt Disney Studios at Remy's for 6:00.
And this is your dinner reservation that you had.
This is our dinner reservation. And this was we think that this was our second best meal in 2 weeks in Europe was Remy's.
What made it so good?
The ambiance. We both got steaks, which were cooked very well. It's a really cute restaurant. And, Ratatouille is my daughter's favorite. And it was just wonderful. It really was. It was wonderful. And then after Remy's, and it was a relaxing, awesome dinner, we ran back to Disneyland. And at this point, like my family knew if we didn't see the drone show, like we weren't going home. Like I had to see the drone show. Like we didn't get to see the dragon under the castle. We have to see the drone show, right? So dinner was at 6:00. And like I said, the drone show is until 10:55. That's plenty of time, right? When we walked into Disneyland Park, it was 8:15. Okay. And I said, I think I want to go sit down. I don't want to risk it. And they were like, come on, Mom. We can do one more ride. I said, fine. So we split up. Me and my daughter went on Big Thunder Mountain, and my son and my husband went on Hyperspace Mountain. Hyperspace Mountain was a posted 10-minute wait, which is the only reason I said they could go. Okay. I said, fine, go. And me and my daughter went to Big Thunder Mountain, which was posted at like 15 minutes. By the time we got there, it was actually 10 minutes. It was wonderful. And both were really just walk on. And then we met back in the middle and sat down so in front of Sleeping Beauty Castle, they have stages in the middle. It's like not against the castle. It's like in the middle and these big planters. We sat against one of the planters on the left side at 8:40 for a 10:55 show.
Oh my goodness.
That is how desperate I was to see the show. And I did offer, I was like, leave your backpacks. I'll hold the space. You guys can all go walk around, go get ice cream, go get snacks. But it was such a long trip. And I don't know what it is. I don't know if it's the people. It's not really as crowded at Disneyland Paris, or if it's because of how beautiful the park is. Everybody was happy, just like sitting there. We had bought a Phantom Manor book that talked about there while we were there, how it was built. And my kids like read through that. And like, I didn't even have my daughter's iPad with us. They just hung out. Like, that's how happy we were there.
Mm-hmm.
It was really special. And the crowds, like, I'm glad that we sat down at 8:40 because by like 8:45, there was no spots left against the planners. And the point to be against the planner is that there's no one in front of you, right?
Mm-hmm.
At 10:53, there was an announcement that due to inclement weather, there would be no drones at the drone show.
Oh, no way.
Yeah. And heartbreak. Oh, well. What do you do? We had an excellent spot, though, for the projections. There's the projections that has with the drones, and then after that, they have a fireworks show. Their fireworks show has projections. I don't remember, they're back to back, so 10:55 and then 11. I don't remember which shows, but I saw pieces of some of the other shows in the show. So as a big Disney fan, it was like interesting because I'm like, oh, those bubbles are from Fantasmic, and this, this other area is from, I'm pretty sure that 10 seconds is from the Hollow Wishes thing. And it was fun to see it like all kind of come together. The fireworks are not like in Florida. They're not big and loud, which is better for my son because he actually really doesn't like fireworks. So it was perfect for him because they're more of like the sparkler, like the stream ones, not big loud circles, right?
Mhm.
And we did the fireworks show and we liked it. I was disappointed because I didn't get to see the drones, but we had a wonderful viewing. And you know what? Our feet weren't exhausted and we had a great couple days. And that was it. We left the park and we're back in the hotel. And that was our visit to Disneyland Paris.
That was that. And you had to fly home the next day. I hope that went better than your flight to London.
Way better, extremely smooth. I used the Disney transportation, the shuttle bus, to get from the hotel back to Charles de Gaulle Airport.
Mhm.
And I will warn people that the shuttle runs every 2 hours. So our departure time was at 11:30. Our options were 6:30 or 8:30 for the shuttle. So obviously we picked 6:30. And thank God we did, because getting through the border protection in Charles de Gaulle took us an hour, took us a full
Mhm.
hour.
Mhm.
So I'm glad we had that option. The bus is not like Magical Express. Don't expect to have TV, cartoons, and friendly driver, like a Mickey Mouse driver. Like the culture there's definitely different. Like it's not like the home parks. But personally, like we loved Disneyland Paris. I don't know if we'll ever go back. I hope we get to someday. I've heard mixed reviews of the parks. We wish we had one more day. We did feel like we got to do most of what we wanted to do, but I would have liked to have done a couple of the shows a second time, a couple of the rides a second time. And the ambiance of the park is absolutely magical. If you love like people watching and just sitting down and enjoying the architecture, that is a park for you. And it was wonderful. Like I said, I don't know if we'll ever go back, but I hope that we have the opportunity because it was outstanding, and now my kids are asking me when we're going to Tokyo Disney, Shannon.
Oh, well, there was a recent trip report about how to do that with kids, about your kids' age.
I think we'll have to be saving some pennies. So I talked your ear off. What questions
N-
do you have? It was a long
Well,
trip.
so I like to know, like, what would you do differently? But I know that you have said you would add another day at the beginning, another day at the end. Would
I
you
would.
have done this ABD?
Okay. It's hard to say. We did like the ABD, and we are planning on another ABD. We were going to do the California Backstage Magic, but now knowing how we like to kind of see stuff and move on, and we like more cultural experiences, like I think doing like the archives and like that kind of stuff, I think my kids are a little too young for it, and other kids might be different, right? Your mileage may vary. So we are looking for an ABD that is more like the speedboat ride, the chocolate museum. My kids really loved like running through the gardens at some of the palaces, right? The golf cart ride, like that were the highlights of the trip. So we're looking for an ABD where there's more quote unquote stuff to do and more cultural experiences
Mhm.
versus historical experiences. I don't think there is any way I could have known that my family would have preferred that before this ABD.
Right. Now you know. That's why it's hindsight 2020.
Exactly, exactly. I do think it helped to go to an English-speaking country the first time for international travel. So do I regret it? I wonder if okay, my if I were to say I regret something, which no regrets, right? I kind of wish I had done the trip earlier in the year because it would have been easier if the temperature
Weather.
was 10 degrees lighter, right? And I think the crowds it would have been a little less crowded at the museums and stuff. And I wonder if we would have had different people in our trip. That being said, I don't think I could have taken my kids out of school for 2 weeks straight. Like,
Yeah. So the time of year was kind of set because of that.
exactly. So that's something. And like, there was no point in time in the trip where we went to a Parisian cafe and had a cappuccino and a croissant. And having done Paris before, like, you have to do that. The coffee at the hotel sucks, Shannon. Like, they're just not good. Like, but it's like you said, it's tough because you pay for these things. So you don't really want to, like, you want to take advantage of things you pay for. Now, knowing what we know, I wish I had taken a little bit more advantage of, they do give you the freedom to wander, right? And there were other families that wandered at different points. So lesson learned, I suspect that we will be doing, not California. I think we might just do a regular Disneyland trip for my kids because I promised them. But I think we might look at doing, I've been looking at some of the other itineraries, maybe Costa Rica or Ireland, which are a little bit more cultural and, I want to say action-packed, but I mean, we never stopped moving on this trip. Like, it was very active, just instead of walking around museums, you're hiking or doing something different, right?
Yeah. So if you go to Tokyo, hypothetically, would that be you planning it or would you be joining a tour?
I think I have to read the Japan EBD. I did glance at it, but I don't remember what it said. I wonder if we should instead try to do a trip ourselves and then add Tokyo Disney to that.
Yeah. And I mean, that recent trip report that was on here, that's what they did. And I felt like they were able to flex with kids about the same age as yours as needed and fit in, some touristy stuff, but also some free time.
And like, how awesome it is that you do these trip reports so we can learn from each other, right?
Well, I was going to tell you that there were some difficult moments during your trip, but if it's any solace, people are listening to this and hopefully learning for their own.
And I do hope it doesn't sound like I'm like complaining. Like, we had fun.
No,
There were just,
it's
things.
helpful. It's helpful. And if things, works would have been better, then now people can listen to this and they don't have to repeat it.
Exactly. That's how I feel. Like, I want to be totally honest about our experience. And there's things that were great about, like, I loved the transportation was handled. I love that they could figure out the hotels for me, like all that kind of stuff. And I'm genuinely looking forward to our next ABD. We will be doing another ABD and I will be booking it within the next 40 days because there's a bounce back offer. You know about the bounce back, right? Yeah. So I will be booking one soon. And we really did. My kids told me that it was the best trip they've ever had in their lives. And they're not one to fluff things up. And I'm so glad we went to Disneyland Paris because it was the perfect end of the trip. And it was almost like a release of, running around and doing all these crazy things. And it was wonderful. I don't understand why some people don't like Disneyland Paris. We thought it was lovely. We really did.
Good. Well, I'm glad that was a good experience. And I appreciate you taking the time to share about the whole trip.
So much.
All right. Thanks,
Thank
Linda.
you for listening, Shannon.
Thank you.
I hope you enjoyed that trip report. Certainly some things to learn there, some pros and cons of their trip, but it sounds like the family had a great time. I think that'll wrap up this episode of WW Prep to Go. For more information on this show, you can always check the show notes in your podcast app or head to the website, wdwprepschool.com. Click on podcast at the top, scroll on to episode 365. Until next time, I will see you on the site.